Chapter 192. After turning Dr. Zola's memories and thoughts upside down, Chenong let go of Dr. Zola's stagnant consciousness. He did not even notice the subtle changes in the outside world. Just like a program that had been deleted and lost a certain period of time, this period of time did not exist for Zola. Arnim Zola. Chenong stared at the special electromagnetic waves in front of him. Zola's consciousness was here. It was as obvious as a gorilla among monkeys, but he knew nothing about it. A lunatic who transferred his consciousness to the internet. A Hydra scientist who used to be human but is now an intelligent life. A geneticist, an information scientist, and a scientist whose intelligence is beyond human comprehension like Howard and Pym. Chenong's sudden words frightened the special wave in the void. It tried to escape, but Skynet immediately let him know that there was no way out. The firewall surrounding him was impregnable. Looks like you know too little about Skynet. Chenong smiled. You treat it as an intelligent life, but how long has the internet been around? Your exploration, understanding, and definition of intelligent life are too shallow. You even treat Skynet as an intelligent program crawling on the internet. If you knew what Skynet is, you would not face me in such a fragile form. I'm indeed surprised, Dr. Doom, but I mean no harm. We have enough common interests in terms of position and interests. I think it's worth considering our relationship. Dr. Zola was indeed very capable. He quickly came back to his senses. He controlled the satellite and sent this text to the Skynet information body. Chenong released some of the nanomachines so that Zola could control them. The silver nanomachines reassembled into a metal robot without a face. It stood in front of Chenong. It said in an electronic voice, Dr. Doom, your invention is very great. It exudes the charm of science, ingenuity, and efficiency from inside out. Skynet is undoubtedly the greatest invention I've ever seen. You flatter me. Chenong did not appreciate it. He still had a faint smile on his face. He looked at him calmly. But you did not fully utilize its power, Dr. Doom. Compared to its ingenious design, your use of it is crude. Everything about humans, consciousness, body, nerve reflex speed, brain reaction speed. Even Luo Ji's way of thinking is restricting the power of this great creation. This is not a miracle that humans can control. Your reactions can't keep up with its speed, and your Luo Ji can't understand its calculations. It's like a horse that can't win because of its rider's clumsiness. You need friendly help, Doctor. For example, letting an intelligent life that has lost its body obtain administrator rights of Skynet. Chenong spread his hands and smiled. Is that so? I have to say it. It's a win-win choice. Zola analyzed for Chenong as if it was true. No one knows more about intelligent life than I do, although you are also a great scientist. But who better at manipulating networks than a guy who lives in a computer? We have a common enemy, Dr. Doom. Hydra has 9 heads. Why can't you be the most important one? We believe in the strong. It sounds very tempting, Chenong said calmly as he looked at the sea. Zola controlled the robot to project some documents and videos of Hydra in front of Chenong. It introduced some low-level secrets of Hydra in detail. Although it did not involve core interests, it was enough to show how huge a force hidden in the dark was. Other than half of S, H, I, E, L, D, there were more hidden forces hidden under the water. Hydra was not so much a remnant of a Nazi organization. It was more like an underground organization created by ambitious people to challenge the international order after World War II. It was a complex organization created by people in power all over the world, motivated by various conspiracies, ambitions, arrogance, and greed. Just like its name, Hydra, the controller of deadly venom and chaos. Unfortunately, we are not the same people. Chenong shook his head. Your ambitions are worthless to me, Zola. I know what you want to do. People hiding in the dark want to stand in the light and enjoy power and wealth. In my opinion, you bunch of rats should just obediently die in the dark. On a planet with only 6 billion people, in less than 200 years, in order to fight for the power of the planet's president. A group of half-greedy, half-arrogant ants hiding in the dark created a lousy organization in order to show their existence. Its influence can't go out of the solar system, and it can't even develop the nearest satellite. How can I take such a simple, primitive, and joke-like organization seriously? Chenang's face was calm and a little cold. I have no interest in joining a group of monkeys. I feel very sorry. Zola's voice became low, as if she had something in her mouth. She said vaguely, I came with friendship, but you rejected our friendship. That was a mistake. Your tone is so fearless. You must be confident that you can escape from my control, right? Chenong regained control of Zola's temporary body. The backdoor and virus that Zola arranged did not work at all. It could only turn into a stiff metal statue again. The electromagnetic wave that Dr. Zola was in had some interesting changes. The frequency became unstable, and the signal simply disappeared from the electromagnetic detection. It became an extremely hidden electromagnetic signal of a special frequency. As long as the consciousness register is still there, I could transfer to other devices at any time. To a certain extent, Dr. Zola could not be killed because he did not exist in the real world. The technology that could capture him in the vast virtual world did not exist yet. After obtaining the full support of Hydra, Zola was like a god in the world of the internet. No one could destroy him. As long as there was a device connected to the internet, Zola was indestructible. But this was only what he thought. In the virtual world, Chenang's figure appeared in front of Zola. He was sitting on a chair, and countless data flowed past him. Space-time coordinates, dimensional expansion, and Chun-Ong used the data to create a world that was exactly the same as the outside world around Zola in just a few seconds. The same moon, sea, and Statue of Liberty. The internet is a virtual world? Of course not. Chun-Ong shook his head. Do you think you exist in another world? That's just a world that ordinary people can't get involved in. The human perspective is limited to the visible light and the level of ordinary matter. Therefore, it seems that the reality that carries the virtual world does not exist. But that doesn't mean that the virtual world is an imaginary space to the real world. You're just a piece of electronic data that exists in this world. Chapter 193. Zola failed. Red Skull's skin was close to his skull, and his eyes were sunken. This was the side effect of him inhaling the telepathic gas, making his head look like a dry skeleton. Due to an accident, the angel's dust corroded his skin, and there was no way for him to recover his face. I didn't expect him to fail, and I didn't expect him to not even be able to escape from Skynet. Baron Citric shook his head. We underestimated our opponent. Dr. Doom is indeed the most dangerous super-criminal identified by S.H.I.L.D. He is cautious, cunning, cruel, insidious, and fierce. When Kim was taken care of, we should have been more vigilant. Zola uploaded her consciousness to the virtual network. This was a foolproof thing, and S.H.I.L.D. couldn't find him. I thought he would be a god on the internet. Red Skull nodded in agreement with the Baron's words. He looked at the information in his hand and said solemnly, although there's a lot of information about Skynet, I always feel that S.H.I.L.D. is hiding something from us. Their information about Skynet and Dr. Doom is completely inconsistent with their actions. Based on my understanding of them, when there is a scandal like this in New York, the U.S. government will pounce like a hungry wolf and tear those who try to provoke it to pieces. Baron Citric turned around and looked at Red Skull. But they didn't. Even if they let the prestige and hegemony of the U.S. suffer, they didn't react. What if they are afraid? That's impossible. The Baron shook his head and said sarcastically, even if there are so many ambitious people and forces in the world, the U.S. is always the strongest. It may suffer, but it will never be afraid. What is there in this world that is worth this giant being afraid of? Terrorist organizations? Supercriminals? Or those international challengers? Even the country across the Pacific will take at least 50 years. Only then can they challenge the U.S. Red Skull couldn't deny it. This is all on Earth. What if it's not this world? The Baron was shocked by Red Skull's words. With their power, of course, they can access the information of those alien civilizations on the Earth. They also know that the Earth is only a small civilization in the universe, but no one is mentally prepared to face an alien civilization that they know nothing about, suddenly broadening their horizons to a vast and terrifying realm. That kind of unknown would bring endless fear. For the sake of caution, suspend the operation against Dr. Doom. This was the conclusion both of them came to. Especially at such a crucial time, it was better not to provoke such an unpredictable enemy. Skynet and Chun-Ong were too mysterious, and they all felt a sense of danger. They have received news that Hydra's nemesis, Captain America Steve Rogers, has been rescued from the ice by S.H.I.E.L.D. With Captain America's keen sense of smell, he will soon discover Hydra's flaws. If he were to pull out the Hydra, it would be a big problem. What about Dr. Zola? The Baron turned to look at Red Skull. The latter just shook his head coldly and said in a slightly regretful tone, "We can imitate Zola's consciousness code and copy an artificial intelligence. It should be able to meet most of the requirements." Meet most of the requirements meant that they would never be able to replace Zola, but they had to consider the price of rescuing Zola. The Baron nodded and agreed with him. Hydra's system was very strange, just like its name. 9 foot referred to the fact that there were many leaders led by several Nazis and the most powerful, ambitious people, and the other leaders assisted in leading this dark organization. It also implied that this organization had a strong vitality and had 9 lives. And Snake meant that it could not see the light. Only by lurking could it survive. It was a complete collection of interests. The 9 heads killed each other, fought for power, and, at the same time, depended on each other. When there was no interest involved, the Baron, Red Skull, did not mind rescuing Zola. But considering the major interests involved, this loyalty was completely unreliable. Now, in the information that Zola knows, withdraw all the intelligence personnel it knows and make a new plan, Red Skull added. Then our losses will be, don't care about the losses, Red Skull said firmly. Remember, concealment is the only rule of survival for Hydra. But we don't know how much Zola knows. With his intelligence, he has been exposed to our internet system. With his ability, he can find any files and data we save. If we give up, Hydra will be cut in half, the Baron fiercely opposed. How much does he know about the Tesseract? Red Skull asked. Zola is the chief person in charge of the Tesseract's research. He knows almost everything, the Baron replied solemnly. If Dr. Apocalypse can pry open Zola's memory, then most of Hydra's secrets will not be guarded against him. Red Skull did not expect the situation to be so serious. Even the worst-case scenario, Zola will still buy us enough time. Zola is one of the most outstanding scientists in the field of biology and energy. His value is limitless. No one will touch him easily. We're safe for now. Before the Baron's voice died away, the underground base in Yellowstone Park began to shake violently. The sound of rocks cracking spread from the surface to the underground. In the midst of the cracking sound, large chunks of granite fell from the rock stratum and smashed heavily on the base's dome. Thousands of tons of rock fragments deformed and twisted the high-strength structure of the alloy dome. However, the powerful kinetic energy and destructive force were withstood by this alloy and structure. As it was transmitted, it was dispersed to several hundred kilometers of rock stratum. This kinetic energy was enough to destroy several dozen bases like this, but when it was dispersed to several hundred kilometers, only slight tremors could be felt on the ground. Chenong slowly retracted his fist. The nanomatter that made up his body just now formed billions of magnetic induction void field energy engines. Through high-strength vibranium and adamantium wire, it conducted about 10 to the 14th power of joule of energy, which is equivalent to the full release of 4 nuclear warheads with a yield of 1 million kilograms. But because of the special metal and stress structure of the Hydra base, this force was conducted to the bottom of Yellowstone Park by a special energy field, causing only a local micro-earthquake. However, Yellowstone Park has the most dangerous magma activity on the American continent, and even the world. Underneath, it lurks the most destructive supervolcano on the Earth. If the geological activity here is affected, causing a volcanic eruption. It will be enough to destroy most of the Earth's ecosystem and kill more than 45% of the surface creatures. Any enemy who attacks the Hydra base must risk perishing together with the enemy. Magma gushed out of the rock formation that Chun-Ong broke, and several hot springs and sinkholes emitted black smoke. Everyone here could feel that the magma activity has changed subtly since that vibration, and began to become more active and active. This scared the Hydra base's inspectors and the nearby National Geological Activity Monitoring Center. From the surveillance, Chun-Ong could be seen wearing the familiar mask, standing alone by the hot spring in Yellowstone Park. The ultra-high-temperature water vapor evaporated from the hot spring and wrapped around him. Red Skull can be sure that the temperature at the center of the steam is definitely more than 1,200 degrees Celsius. Chun-Ong looked incomparably small. Compared to the huge crack under his feet, he was as small as a speck of dust. An even smaller fist print appeared in the center of the crack, forming several radial cracks. The base was hundreds of meters deep, and it looked ridiculous. It is this small human who punched through most of the Earth's crust with his own fist. The base was alarmed at this moment, and Baron and Red Skull reacted the moment they heard the vibration. Red Skull sneered. It seems that our guests can't wait, and Zola is not as tough as we thought. Chapter 194. Hello. Is this the Washington Department of Geological Disasters? The voice on the phone was very anxious. It paused several times, as if it was forcing itself to speak at the top of its voice. The operator could tell that this was the human instinct to be speechless under extreme fear. He could not help but sit up straight and quickly replied, "This is Washington, Yellowstone Park. What happened there?" The volcano here is about to erupt." There was a cry on the other side of the phone. "Excellent experience." The operator hurriedly pressed the alarm and transferred the call to the emergency line. "Yellowstone Park, please speak clearly. What characteristics have appeared in the volcano? Send us the data report." "There's no time. The Geological Institute has been swallowed by the magma. It's close to us." "No. God." There was a noisy voice on the phone, and very vague words could barely be heard. "There's danger, volcano. Metal masked man, the crust has penetrated. Hello. Can you hear me? Hang in there. The helicopter is on its way." The operator shouted. Only the last vague word came from the other side of the phone. "Hydra. Notify the Major Disaster Emergency Center and send them the recording. Let the nearby Park Authority helicopter go first. Notify the National Guard and contact other research institutes in Yellowstone Park. Prepare all the geological data for this year. Use the emergency line to inquire about the situation at the nearby geological observation points. Let them submit abnormal data to us. Quick!" The atmosphere of the entire Department of Geological Disasters suddenly froze. Yellowstone Park was the most important unit in the American Geological Survey, and a giant underground volcano it was one of the top 3 that the Department of Geological Disasters closely monitored. Everyone here knew that a volcanic eruption would bring such tragic consequences. Although it was far away in Washington, the researchers here did not think that they could survive such a terrible disaster. Every researcher was a warrior at this moment. "Park Authority, how's the situation?" The director connected the phone to the Park Authority. "It's not good. We can see the rising column of volcanic ash from the periphery of the park. It has a diameter of several kilometers. No fire has been found so far, but it is certain that the volcano is in an active state. Wait, there's something in the middle of the volcano. We found metal debris under the volcanic ash. It's man-made. Park Authority, I'm the Secretary of State. Please come closer. Can you connect to the camera?" The Secretary of State in the White House understood the situation through the holographic image. The helicopter flew from the right side, avoiding the direction of the volcanic ash, and carefully approached the crater where the dark red magma was gushing out. Sure enough, some metal wreckage could be seen in the dark red magma. The pilot decided to get closer to observe the situation. When the helicopter descended to a suitable height for observation, the observer was surprised to find that in the center of the raging magma, there was a metal wreckage. A human figure was clearly visible. Chun-Ong stood in the middle of the crater where lava was gushing out of. Beneath his feet was the surging lava, but he was not alone. The dark gray iron current surrounded him, opposing the lava. The gray dark red lava and the dull gray iron current chased each other and converged into a huge Pisces pattern. The flowing iron flowed over Chun-Ang's feet, making him look like a nail that was stuck in the infernal sea of fire. Who is he? The person from the National Park Service almost lost his grip on the joystick. Someone's at the crater, standing in the magma. Oh my God! The crater is a fist mark. When Chun-Ong raised his head, the observer on the helicopter saw the steel mask on his face. Although Chun-Ong had already appeared once in New York, because of the official blockade, they could not recognize what the mask represented. Then they saw a scene that made their blood boil. In the middle of the volcano's lava, in the center of the fist mark, a broken door with a hydra pattern could be clearly seen. Washington, this is the National Park Service. We found a human in the crater. It seems to be a supernatural phenomenon. He is attacking the crater and asking for support here. In the area of volcanic activity, we found a sign similar to a hydra. Chun-Ong slowly raised his hand. The two were so scared that they dropped the radios in their hands on the helicopter. 5 nuclear warheads with radiation symbols floated behind Chun-Ong. Is he crazy? The Baron shouted as if he had seen a ghost. F***CK. Our base is built in the weakest part of the Earth's crust. Even we only dared to prepare a nuclear bomb in the base that could cause an earthquake in North America. He did this. Isn't he afraid that the world will be destroyed? He doesn't care. Red Skull was still able to remain calm. He doesn't care about the world more than we do. Let's surrender. We can't beat him. Let's put things back on the track we are best at. Even if Hydra is temporarily controlled by him, it doesn't matter. There are more common interests between us. The Baron acted as if he had been liberated and quickly waved the white flag. Damn it, we actually met such a lunatic. A relieved smile appeared on his face. In just a few minutes, he had experienced the craziest mental pressure in his life. He could destroy a city without batting an eyelid, but that did not mean he could face a madman who was trying to destroy the world for a small matter. Chun-Ang's behavior was like a madman who used nuclear bombs to kill cockroaches. He inherited the fine tradition of fighting people. After using nuclear bombs to build reservoirs, nuclear bombs to control pollution, and nuclear bombs to extinguish fires, nuclear bombs could finally be used to knock on doors. But Chun-Ang's fist continued. Is he crazy? We have already surrendered. The Baron almost collapsed. He grabbed his head. His face was terrible, and he asked almost crazily, is he going to destroy the whole world? How stupid could he be? Doesn't he know that he will destroy the world? Tell him to stop. The Baron screamed and watched in despair as Chun-Ang's fist fell. The warhead, thicker than a person, was ignited by the ultra-high temperature as Chun-Ong raised his right hand. Before the two people in the helicopter could react, they saw the blazing sun fall in front of them. High temperature, extreme heat, radiation, shockwave. Unparalleled light bloomed from Chun-Ang's palm, and as Chun-Ang's fist landed, it fully erupted to the earth. Hundreds of meters of mud waves lifted the entire earth. Light energy, radiation, potential energy, and high temperature all poured in one direction and burst out from Chun-Ang's fist. There was no sound, no vibration. Everything was like an old-fashioned silent black and white movie, rotating and playing. The earth began to shatter from the point of contact with Chun-Ong, and then at a faster speed, the whole earth was overturned from the surface to the depths of the crust. Within a distance of 1,200 meters, cracks and vibrations spread wildly. Hydra's base was torn to pieces in the first place. A huge lava ball rose into the sky and engulfed the entire Yellowstone Park. The powerful energy accumulated in the core for hundreds of millions of years gushed out. The lava torrent of several kilometers in diameter rose into the sky like a flood. Hundreds of millions of tons of volcanic ash, with tens of millions of cubic meters of nearby land, may be washed into the stratosphere at any time. The Yellowstone volcano, which has been sleeping for millions of years, slowly woke up from its slumber. Because of Chun-Ang's precise control of energy, the helicopter survived the previous nuclear shock. They watched the volcano wake up in despair. No one knows better than them that from the Andes to the Great Lakes, from Washington to Miami, no civilization can survive such a terrible earthquake. From North America to South America, there will be a tsunami that will drown the entire continent. Before that, a powerful earthquake will first destroy all traces of the continent and bring the world back to the era millions of years ago. Volcanic ash and tsunamis can destroy most of the ecosystem. Less than half of all life on the planet may survive. All countries and societies will be destroyed, and the surviving human beings will usher in the cold winter of civilization. The pilot released the joystick in his hand and let the helicopter shake violently in the airflow. He said dryly to the radio, "Washington, the world is going to be destroyed. May God bless us." Shield's Nick roared at the top of his voice, "Go stop it." For the first time, the Avengers came out in full force. But would they make it in time? The two people from the National Park Service saw the researchers from the Geological Monitoring Station waving their hands on the ground in the distance. There were also some tourists next to them. They did not die in the lava, but abandoned the radio and fled to higher ground. Most of the humans in Yellowstone Park were gathered here to witness the eruption of the world's most destructive volcano. The helicopter fell towards the crater, and the two could even hear the exclamations of the people in the distance. They saw Chun-Ong raise his fist again, as if he was going to attack the crater. Insignificant humans and a volcano that was countless times stronger than them were originally an absurd scene. For some reason, the two of them seemed to see a towering giant with one hand pressed on the ground and the other raised high, ready to attack. In a place where the two of them could not see, space, the most basic existence in the void, was twisted into a strand. Space was like a tensile force, with Chun-Ang's fist as the core, causing space to bend, deform, and accumulate a vast amount of power. Chun-Ang's fist was not locked onto the underground rock formations and materials, but the most basic form of existence, space. If expressed mathematically, the curvature in front of Chun-Ang's fist increased infinitely, and the curvature in the back correspondingly decreased infinitely. Gravitational waves curled the space in front of his fist. This was originally a technology used for faster-than-light spaceships. Chun-Ong used his own strength to miniaturize and apply it to his fist. His action of raising his fist was like raising his hand. It had nothing to do with the 1,200 kinds of Chinese and foreign boxing techniques that he was proficient in. It was not based on any boxing theory, nor did it conform to any mechanical formula. It was neither efficient nor beautiful. It was like a randomly waving tortoise's fist. It was plain and crude. Even a person who had practiced boxing for 3 months would not be able to make such an ugly punch. However, this was because this fist had already surpassed any fist theory. It was not a fist to begin with, but a curvature engine installed in the hands of humans. By warping the universe, it made use of the loopholes in the laws of physics to break the limit of the speed of light. Chun-Ong slowly closed his eyes, and he easily captured Red Skull's consciousness using his psionic ability. He asked him, "Have you ever seen a fist that surpasses the speed of light?" Chapter 195. Heaven and earth were like a curtain as the scene shook violently. With Chun-Ang's fist as the center, dense ripples appeared in the space, slowly expanding circle by circle. There seemed to be a sizzling sound as the curtain was torn open. Then up, down, left, right, front, and back, the arrangement of space, time, and matter were all shattered. It was like a delicate vase, smashed, and then pieced it back together. The gravity became violent and crazy, and in some places, the matter was torn apart. The existing space was extending infinitely, causing the matter in the space to be instantly torn into a sparse ionic state. When the conductive force of space entered the Earth, the curvature acceleration on Chun-Ang's fist was completely borne by the matter on the ground. The curvature on the ground instantly shrunk to a relative extreme, while the curvature under the ground correspondingly shrunk to infinity. The surface area of Yellowstone volcano reached 7,988 square kilometers, and its underground volume was several times this figure. The volcano that was shaken by Chunang's nuclear melting fist slowly awakened from its slumber. This period of time was supposed to last for a few months. It started with a volcano tentatively entering the active phase and carrying out a preliminary eruption. This eruption would be a large-scale volcanic disaster. The entire Yellowstone National Park would be destroyed, and hundreds of millions of tons of volcanic ash would be thrown into the atmosphere, causing a major earthquake of at least magnitude 8 or above in North America. Following that, the entire supervolcano would enter the active phase. Its continuous eruption could last for hundreds of years, and the most intense period could also last for a few months. The geological activity would completely change the landscape of the entire Pacific region of America. During this process, it was estimated that 1.9 to 2 billion people would die. This would lead to drastic changes in the global climate and environment, and even the extinction of mankind. The Earth collapsed in an instant, and the ground hundreds of meters deep directly sank into a bottomless abyss with Chunang's fist as the center. A huge whirlpool was forming. It tore apart the surface of the Earth's crust, along with the rock strata, the ground, and everything on it, and was sucked into a blender of crushed granite and sewing. A huge depression appeared at the crater of the volcano that was about to erupt, and magma shot up into the sky. The entire volcano was smashed into the ground by Chunang. The curvature acceleration of hundreds of millions of tons of strata directly smashed through the Earth's crust and sank into the Earth's mantle. At the location of North America on Earth, a depression visible to the naked eye was deeply embedded in the Earth's surface and was rapidly expanding. Red Skull watched as Chunang casually slammed the volcano that was about to erupt into the mantle, and the expression on his face was as if he had eaten a big bug. The entire Yellowstone Park had become a giant crater. Hundreds of millions of tons of material disappeared on the surface, and a huge crater with a diameter of 15 kilometers appeared where the crater used to be. Even the White House in Washington could clearly feel the trembling of the ground under their feet, and the shock wave of the Earth being torn hundreds of kilometers away could be felt. Looking at Chunang standing indifferently in the air, Red Skull's thoughts stopped. He was held in midair by Chunang, and his body had long been torn apart and sunk into the mantle layer, melting in the magma, built by the Hydra in imitation of adamantium. Even the ruins of the base with the strongest defense had sunk into the Earth's mantle and could not be found. It was a huge base, more than 3,000 combatants. At this time, only Red Skull's consciousness was left, and it was held in Chunang's hands. The powerful firepower inside was enough to resist shields' encirclement and suppression, designed by geological and structural experts. And the unique building structures that can operate normally in the magma were easily destroyed by Chunang's. Abnormal fluctuations in the clouds could be seen in the distance. Along with the violent earthquake, Iron Man in the red and gold armor took the first step. He floated beside the giant crater and looked at the huge abyss that collapsed at the scene with some sluggishness. Tawny opened his visor. Then, as he surveyed his surroundings, he began to stutter. What happened here? Soon, the Quinjet arrived at the scene with the Avengers. How did Yellowstone Park become like this? Captain America's expression was a little confused. He was notified to rescue the geological disaster in Yellowstone Park and solve the criminals who tried to trigger a volcanic eruption. But at the scene, he saw a terrorist disaster that had already happened. The eruption of Yellowstone volcano in 1 million BC had a yield of 25 billion tons, equivalent to a 25 billion tons of TNT explosion. This is the smallest of the 3 eruptions in history, only a quarter of the other 2. It represents one of the most terrifying forces in the world. So the geological activity it brings can even change the continental shelf. But under Chunang's punch, it was blocked. Chunang imprisoned Red Skull's consciousness fluctuations in the deepest part of the Skynet. Ignoring the fear and surrender in his mind, he flipped through, read, dissected, and analyzed everything in Red Skull's consciousness and thoughts, including the memories and thoughts in the most secret corners of Red Skull's consciousness and thoughts, to the extent of no detail. And although Red Skull struggled wildly and resisted, it was useless. Captain America soon noticed Chenong, and he asked in a deep voice, "Who is he?" "You don't know?" Tawny replied with an ugly expression. "It's Doom. S.H.I.L. most wanted criminal, Dr. Doom, the mastermind of the New York War, one of the craziest demons in human history. Doom, the leader of the Doomsday Church. The Lord of Skynet. Doom." Captain America has obviously heard of this name. In fact, this is the name he is most familiar with since he woke up. There are many titles behind this name. As Tawny said, each of them represents S.H.I.E.L.D. fear and anger. Captain America has always been nightmarish when he hears S.H.I.E.L.D. agents mention this name. The name Doom has become a nightmare for S.H.I.E.L.D. and many people around the world. Captain America grasped a shield and looked at Chenong with a serious and sharp look. He was cautious and keen to find flaws. Black Widow grabbed his hand and shook her head. "Steve, no. It's not the time to provoke him. We can't afford to pay a bigger price. Steve, you are our hope. You can't die in vain. We will have a more thorough and detailed plan. Don't be impulsive." Black Widow looked into his eyes and sincerely advised, "You are a warrior, not an impulsive vigilante. Let him go," Tawny said indifferently. "Let him see how terrifying Dumb is so that his brain, which has been frozen for half a century, can clear up. Skynet's military strength is 3 times that of the Earth as a whole. Its industrial manufacturing capacity is 195 times that of the Earth's industrial potential, and its conventional technology is at least 200 years ahead of us. The whole United States is gray by it." Chapter 196. Steve placed the shield on his left arm and looked straight into Chun-Ang's eyes without the slightest bit of fear. The two of them were separated by the ruins that Chun-Ang had created about 800 meters away. Looking down from the edge of the abyss, they could still hear the volcanic activity and rumbling sounds. There was active magma at the bottom. Someone once told me that because the strong are born with power, they have lost their awe of power. Only the weak understand the value of power, understand love and compassion. Steve stood across from Chun-Ang and gripped the shield in his hand as he spoke to Chun-Ang. "That is exactly what you are. Your external strength cannot hide your lack of personality. The true strength of the strong lies in the heart." A smile appeared under the mask on Chun-Ang's face, and he replied with some emotion, "Don't make a fuss. You know nothing about power." His tone was as if he was answering the silly words of a naive child. "Captain, don't go." Black Widow tried to stop Steve, but he gently pulled her away. "I am Captain America. A hero can die, but I cannot remain indifferent to crime." Steve clasped the shield and faced Chun-Ang, who was floating hundreds of meters away. "But it is not worth it." Iron Man came around from the side and stood in front of him. "I think it is a wise choice to act within your means." Steve shook his head. "Then it will not be me." The shield made of vibranium and adamantium flew out from Captain America's hand and flew in an arc toward Chun-Ang's chest. Although it was not fast, its trajectory was extremely difficult to judge. Before the shield could fly more than 200 meters, it was caught by a claw burning with green flames. A monster wrapped in hellfire leaped up from the abyss and grabbed the shield in midair. Its hooves landed heavily on the edge of the cliff. The monster, which was tens of meters tall, fell to the ground. It did not even cause the Avengers to feel the slightest shock. It had long, curved horns like a razor. On its back were dark red bat wings. The monster's body was seeping with lava and a strong smell of sulfur, as if it was a demon from hell. Holding Captain America's shield in his right hand, Balrog roared at the sky, revealing his ferocious teeth. "Steve Rogers." His voice was hoarse. "Such a weak worm is not worthy to worship the great master. Your opponent is me." He swung the round shield in his right hand at Steve. Captain America had to roll to avoid its attack. The ground under his feet was hit so hard that a large piece of it collapsed, and the shield hit the back of his head with green sparks. Rogers, as if he had eyes under his feet, nimbly avoided the collapsed ground and rushed to the position of the Avengers. At the same time, he caught his shield. There was nothing strange about the shield's appearance. But in reality, the Inferno Demon's body was scorching hot from the Inferno Demon's poisonous flames. Even if one was very close to the Inferno Demon, one wouldn't feel the slightest bit of heat. But within the green flames, the high temperature existed in the form of magic. It was like a curse, an inextinguishable Inferno Demon that burned one's soul. Captain America takes the shield. As soon as he sensed that something was wrong, he immediately let go and retreated. The Superman serum gave him a body several times that of a human, but it couldn't resist the burning of the poisonous flames from the otherworld demon. The green inferno spread from his forearm to his chest, and the flesh and blood could be seen quickly fading from the burned area, revealing a hideous and dissimulated wound. The sharp pain burning from the depths of his soul made Captain America's forward step soft. His body was shaky, and the pain could make a mortal fly away every second. Even Steve couldn't help but cry out in pain. "Ah, Captain!" The other Avengers were shocked, and Hawkeye shot an arrow at Balrog's right eye. It didn't dodge, and the arrow burned out in the flames around its body. The flame whip around its waist rolled towards Captain America, and the thorny whip had a ferocious barb. Roar! A loud roar sounded behind Balrog. Hulk grabbed Balrog's right hand and stood in front of Steve. Iron Man gave him a hard blow in the back of his head. Balrog struggled violently, and countless hideous and twisted heads appeared on the flames on its body's surface, tearing at Hulk's body. The vicious flames penetrated Hulk's skin and devoured Hulk's flesh and blood wantonly. The severe pain made Hulk's mind even crazier, and his muscles wriggled and expanded several times. From Chun-Ang's perspective, the power of the anger meme was like a substance burning in Hulk's body. The angrier he was, the stronger Hulk's power became. Hulk grabbed Balrog's right shoulder with one hand and his wrist with the other, lifting Balrog, who was twice the size of Hulk's body, from the ground and tearing Balrog's body with tens of thousands of tons of power. Hulk lifted Balrog by the waist and slammed it to the ground. Every swollen muscle, toughness and elasticity are more than 10,000 times better than the best fibers known to mankind. The fire of anger burning from his chest brought Hulk endless power, making his muscles tighten and contract exaggeratedly, bringing him hundreds of millions of tons of strangulation power to Balrog's two arms that were strangling Balrog, and he abruptly tore Balrog's head off. Flames rose from Balrog's body and burned into a blazing, dazzling white ball. Balrog's head turned into fine sand and slowly fell from Hulk's hand. Steve gritted his teeth and endured the extreme pain from his right arm. Chun-Ong slowly walked out of the flames. Hulk faced him, and there was not a single part of his powerful muscles that was not taut. His beast-like intuition kept him on extreme vigilance. "Hulk, Hulk!" Chun-Ong looked at the pile of ashes burned by Balrog, his emotions calm. "I didn't expect that New York's underground emperor, Black Overlord Kingpin, would die in your hands in such a form. What a waste. If it was against any of you, it wouldn't have failed. Unfortunately, it met Hulk." Black Widow stared at Chun-Ang's mask and was shocked when she heard Kingpin's name. However, after listening to Chun-Ang's words, she smiled sarcastically. "He was already dead when he fell into your hands. Are you ready to face me?" Chun-Ong asked rhetorically. "Nick shouldn't allow you to be so impulsive. To be honest, you don't even deserve me to take you seriously now. You have potential. Why don't you wait for yourself to grow?" Because heroes never retreat. Iron Man stood behind Hulk and gestured with his hands. An ancient person from the last century believed so. "Although I don't like him, this is our own business. You are the enemy, and I will never abandon my comrades in the face of the enemy. Besides, I know what responsibility is. My knowledge tells me that everything can be calculated. As long as there is enough data, everything is under control. However, my intuition believes that humans, or intelligent creatures, can create miracles. Chun-Ong smiled. Now it seems that you need a miracle. He took a step forward and the earth trembled under his feet. To be continued. Chapter 197. A suffocating pressure rushed towards the Avengers. It was not because of any changes in the material world, nor was it because of the spiritual domain, momentum, courage, or spiritual pressure. Chun-Ong just walked towards them normally, but it was enough to make the Avengers collapse. Hey, in the process of evolution, the ability to perceive danger is one of the most important survival needs. Most animals, plants, and even microorganisms have this magical ability to predict danger and be vigilant against natural enemies. On the eve of an earthquake, all kinds of animals will feel anxious and even riot. Humans are the most spiritual and intelligent creatures on Earth, so this ability should be the strongest. However, humans are too powerful, and there are no creatures on Earth that can threaten the safety of humans. So, this ability to predict danger has deteriorated. However, the strong are an exception. The biological instinct of the Avengers has been perfectly developed by them as the basic quality of a strong person. But now they have to succumb to this survival instinct. The fear that comes from the depths of their genes, the fear that humans have towards their creator, and the instinctive obedience of those at the bottom of the food chain to those at the top of the food chain. Their genetic instincts crazily urge them to obey, and the suffocating sense of oppression rushed towards them wave after wave. This kind of influence from the origin of life can only be resisted with an iron will. The conflict between the subconscious and the will made the Avengers stagger and almost collapse. As a beast without consciousness, Hulk is the most affected. He has awakened from his madness and stepped back with his biological instincts, feeling extreme fear towards Chun-Ong. The other Avengers watched as Chun-Ong approached step by step, and their hearts were already filled with despair. People who can't overcome their instincts are just the kind of creature. They have sexual impulses and will go into heat. Chun-Ong looked at Iron Man and smiled meaningfully. They fear their creator. They obey the instincts of their genes and the influence of the body's chemical secretion. Animal nature is greater than human nature, and instinct is greater than will. Such a person is not worthy to be my enemy. In the time it took to say those words, Chun-Ong had already walked in front of the Avengers, but these heroes could not even move a finger. He faced the Iron Man, Tony Stark, and with a hook of his finger, he controlled the hormone secretion in his brain. Animals who can't tell the difference between love and sex, and whose lower body is controlled by dopamine and testosterone, don't deserve to be my enemy. Tawny was shocked to realize that he was rising. The more he looked at Hulk, the more he liked him. He even felt a little obsessed. He was like a peerless beauty. His lower body was already rising uncontrollably. He bit his lower lip hard. He held onto the last shred of clarity and willpower in his heart. Chun-Ong had already arrived in front of Hawkeye and Black Widow. He didn't do anything, but their genetic instincts made them completely paralyzed. Those who fear the Creator and are controlled by the instinct of fear are not worthy to be my enemy. After saying that, without even looking at them, he turned and walked towards the most powerful Hulk. Standing in front of the giant, Chun-Ong looked very small. But in the hearts of the Avengers, he was 10,000 times more terrible than the ferocious giant. His shadow was as tall as the abyss. Chun-Ong shook his head slightly. Those who are controlled by the beast have no reason and thoughts, do not pursue wisdom and the unknown, don't deserve to be my enemy. It was easy for Chun-Ong to control Hulk's consciousness. Let him follow behind him like a minion. Finally, he came to Captain America, who was troubled by both hellfire and genetic pressure. No matter how absurd the thought is, in ignorance, in depravity, in chinibu, in naivety, both are better than being controlled by instinct, because the latter comes from your body, while the former comes from your will. The body can be easily analyzed, understood, grasped, and controlled by science and knowledge, but the will cannot. Chun-Ong calmly looked down at the Avengers and said coldly, "If you can't come up with the strongest will, if you can't let the future go beyond my complete control, then your future will be dark." The timeline passed through Chun-Ang's palm. It could be seen that the original infinite future was woven into a bundle in Chun Ang's hands. The past was determined, the present was being determined, and the future should be infinite, but the infinite future was getting clearer and clearer. At the end of the universe, Skynet collected the data of the entire universe. More and more futures were locked. The movement of the planets, the state of the galaxy, the life and death of the galaxy, and the blooming of a flower on the earth were all in his control. The infinite fate of the universe was determined. Then there were intelligent creatures, weak-willed intelligent creatures, and their consciousness information was first incorporated into the computing system. A galaxy fell. Only some of the most powerful creatures and existences were still surrounded by fog. Thanos, Swallower, Goddess of Death, Surpasser, and the Earth. The fog of the future on the Avengers was getting thinner and thinner. The fog that was originally comparable to that of Thanos was now so sparse that it could not cover the threads of their fate. The future that Chun weaved was getting longer and more perfect. The fate of Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, and more superheroes appeared in the future. The complex behavior and thinking structure, the trajectory and equation of the fate line. If Chun was allowed to complete the set of fate, then superheroes would never have a chance with miracles. Their potential would be fixed, and their behavior would become a pattern. They would be the characters written by Chun, and they would never be able to escape from his palm. No, Captain America was the first to struggle up from the ground. He resisted the pressure of genetic instinct and hellfire and stood on the ground. He glared at Chun. Darkness, get out of my way. A hoarse roar came from his throat. Blood could be seen dripping from the corner of his mouth, where his vocal cords had been torn. Chun felt the resistance of fate, and the future became chaotic. The fog on the Avengers grew explosively, and infinite possibilities gathered on them. Looking at these people struggling to break away from the control of genetic instinct, Chun nodded and smiled. A fixed future will never reach my goal. Only by pursuing infinite possibilities can I achieve miracles. I hope you can bring me a surprise. Roar. Hulk stood up. Chun knew that there was no limit to Hulk's power, but he did not expect that Hulk, who had broken free from his shadow, would appear in such a posture. Extreme anger made him infinitely stronger in wisdom and knowledge. Maybe it was because he knew that he could not defeat Chun with pure strength. Hulk's anger meme gave him stronger combat wisdom and evolutionary instinct. Hulk's body did not grow bigger, but his energy was already as vast as an abyss. Originally, Hulk could move mountains and seas with his kinetic potential energy. He used the method of increasing his mass and speed at the same time to exert his own strength, transforming his weight and punching speed into the power to look down on the world. But for Chun, this level of power was just a joke. There was no speed that could exceed the speed of light. The kinetic potential energy brought by Hulk's mass and speed was vulnerable in the face of the infinite energy that surpassed the speed of light. Mass is the space-time force of an object, which is closely related to speed. The greater the speed, the greater the mass. And mass is the same concept as energy in physics. The essence of power is energy and speed. Going deeper, it is speed. Gravitational potential energy is already a quite efficient power. It can transform energy and speed more perfectly, but it is far from enough. It is far from enough in front of Chun. Hulk has lost contact with the earth under his feet. He is in an anti-gravity state, and his strength can only be held in his body by human means. If he fights against Chun without the support of a reaction force, it will be like fighting against the earth. He will only move in the opposite direction of the force at an extremely high speed and shoot out of the atmosphere. Chun looked at Hulk expectantly. Every change of Hulk, matter, energy, spirit, memes, genes, and all kinds of parameter data were under his control. This best experimental sample made Chun set up nearly 10,000 research groups in Skynet in an instant. The research content all came from this extremely crazy Hulk in front of him. The next moment, Hulk used a biological structure that even Chun did not have to create an organ that can completely transform energy into gravitational force, which is kinetic potential energy. As expected, the end of all power is gravitational force. It doesn't act on matter, but on time. The essence is energy and speed. It was proposed by Einstein's equations as early as the last world. Chun-Ong ignored the powerful force that can smash half of the Earth. In his calculations, this kinetic potential energy is enough to penetrate the Earth's core and cause half of the planet to collapse. Its power is not much weaker than the moon hitting the Earth at the second cosmic speed. It can destroy the experimental civilization that Chun-Ong worked so hard to create on this planet. This is not a battlefield. Chun-Ong kind of understood why humans hated Hulk so much. Even Bruce himself feared and hated Hulk. The crazy Hulk was really afraid of himself. Chun-Ong did not want to destroy the Earth, but Hulk almost did it. In an extremely short time, Chun-Ong came to the front of Hulk's fist, facing his huge fist, and pointed his right hand at the center of his opponent's fist. The current Chun-Ong can be directly equivalent to the Earth in terms of weight, and it is the kind of density that is completely compressed into Chun-Ang's body. Chun-Ong, who has seized control of the surrounding gravitational force through energy homogenization, can borrow the mass of the planet, but loser like Hulk can't. The result was not surprising. Hulk, who had an Earth in front of him, was sent flying high, flying out of the Earth like a meteor at a speed far beyond the first cosmic speed. In the complicated eyes of the Avengers, Chun-Ong smiled slightly, ignored them, and turned to follow Hulk. If he ignored it and let it destroy Mars or the moon, it would be a lot of trouble for Chun-Ong. Not to mention the impact on the state of the Earth. Not to mention the matter of transporting a planet from a few light years away. Chapter 198. The universe was a deep and dark place. It was quiet, vacuum, weightless, and infinitely vast. Even if 10,000 nuclear bombs were to explode here, it would definitely not affect the Earth. This was because Hulk was currently 2 million kilometers away from the Earth, which was equivalent to 100 times the diameter of the Earth. This was a good battlefield. At least Chun-Ong did not have to worry about accidentally destroying humanity and Earth. Hulk had completely lost the characteristics of a human. In space, his mass expanded crazily. He was half the size of the moon and was made of dark green flesh. In Chun-Ang's view, the current Hulk might only retain a trace of being a human in appearance. He was like a giant that had been magnified hundreds of millions of times. Of course, because of the distance, Chun-Ong could only see a dark green land. It was curved and extended infinitely, occupying 1/3 of his field of vision. If he was closer to Earth, Hulk's mass alone would be enough to set off a global tsunami on Earth. In space, such a body size was clearly more suitable for survival and combat. A large body size could carry more matter, enough to form a self-sufficient ecosystem, and there was nothing more precious than matter in the universe. Although the planets were huge, and although the sea of stars was vast, the endless void was billions of times larger than a material planet. A larger volume meant more matter and more energy, enough to support the massive consumption of space migration. Without superluminal technology, the volume of a spaceship would need to be 1/3 the size of Earth to reach the nearest star system to Earth. Moreover, mass was very important to Hulk now. Chun-Ang's control of space was unparalleled. He was a master of controlling gravity and chasing space-time. He could move faster than light in the universe with the contradiction of curvature, but Hulk could not do it. Hulk borrowed the matter of the pocket universe to fill his body. If he used the gas he spewed out, if he used a reaction force like magnetic fluid, it would mean that he would constantly lose matter. Then when the virtual universe asked for matter to compensate, Hulk could only use his original mass to compensate. Hulk could only compensate with his original mass, which meant that he would disappear from this universe. Therefore, Hulk could only rely on his huge mass. He interfered with the gravitational field of the solar system and relied on the gravitational force of the sun to obtain power like Earth and other planets. He also had to be wary of Chun-Ong interfering with his gravitational field. The void around Chun-Ong was distorted, and the starry sky was upside down around him. The The starlight from a North Star was in front of him at an angle of 15 degrees, while the sun was behind him. The light moved along the shortest path. However, space itself was distorted. The light passing in front of Chenong was 0.0003 seconds faster than behind him. This meant that the space behind Chenong was 100,000 kilometers longer than the space in front of him. When Chenong moved, Hulk couldn't even think about capturing his light signals, because Chun'ang's speed far exceeded the speed of light signals. Even the sun's radiation couldn't catch up, so there was no such thing as a reflection signal. Hulk could only rely on the slow 0.0003 seconds of light passing through Chun'ang's back to determine his trajectory. The black that appeared in his field of vision flashed for only 0.3 milliseconds. Hulk was so depressed that he almost went crazy. He lost his speed in the universe. It was equivalent to losing everything. Hulk's fastest attack was only at the speed of photons. Chenong could easily throw such an attack behind him, and Hulk could see it. There were only light signals in the universe. His line of sight wasn't even as fast as Chun'ang's speed. He couldn't hit, couldn't catch up, couldn't see, couldn't touch. Too weak. Too weak. Chenong sighed. His voice was a combination of gravitational waves and light radiation, so it could be transmitted in the universe. In the universe, if your speed is a bit faster, you'll be strong without limit. On Earth, I also have to worry about the energy brought by superluminal speed, which would destroy the planet. But now I only need to worry about whether my speed will make time go back to the primitive period of human civilization. Chenong stood within a distance of 10 kilometers outside of Hulk's star, looking at Hulk. His eyes were full of disappointment. It seems that you need to be angrier. Chenong pressed his palm on Hulk's head, and the surrounding space of tens of thousands of kilometers suddenly collapsed, as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was sinking, pressing down on Hulk's head. The gravitational waves that distorted time and space made the speed of light on Hulk's surface twice as fast. The mass equivalent to a small black hole appeared on the surface of Hulk's body. The collapsing gravitational force exploded violently, peeling off the flesh and blood of more than half of Hulk's head from his body, annihilating and evaporating the mass of trillions of tons. The fission reaction created instantly transformed the stripped matter into endless photons, rays, radiation, and electromagnetic waves. Chenong turned the black hole into a white hole with a flip of his hand, spewing out a huge amount of radiation. The energy flow evaporated half of Hulk's body. It could be seen that in the void, the Hulk's body, which was half the size of the moon, had evaporated more than half of its body. Objects with a mass of more than 5 billion tons disappeared from Hulk's body. They were stripped away by the particle flow at the speed of light and escaped outside the solar system. Roar! Hulk, who was left with only a small part of his shoulder and the head below his nose, fell into extreme pain and anger. He still roared tenaciously, and his wounds squirmed and healed. In the void, countless substances appeared out of thin air, and under Hulk's control, they quickly filled his body. Chenong could feel that space was disappearing. Every unit of space was replaced with a huge amount of substances out of thin air, and then repaired Hulk's body according to the information left behind. This ability had exceeded any super regeneration ability that Chenong had ever studied. Wolverine's super regeneration ability was essentially the reverse of his individual time, returning to a physical state of time. No matter how much damage he suffered, even if he lost a huge amount of flesh and blood, Wolverine could rely on the origin time anchor to restore his state to a constant state of time. There was also Hulk's previous recovery ability, which was the replacement of a large amount of substances from the pocket universe. But now, Hulk's ability had far exceeded the so-called super regeneration and even exceeded Wolverine's concept of time. It was not the pocket universe, but the matter of the universe's dimension. Under Chun'ang's frenzied attack, Hulk finally revealed a corner of his essence. Chun'ang said softly, "So it's a strong interaction creature." The essence of the strong interaction was due to the mutual attraction of the central body of the unsaturated free space complex with the outer circular body of the other unsaturated free space complex, due to the unsaturation of its comprehensive circular body through the central polarity of the neutron, and the mutual attraction of the outer circular body of the other unsaturated free space complex. If one wanted to further explain it, it would start from the primitive space element, referred to as the void element, the normal space element, the neutron, and the matter element, the free space. It involved the essence of space and the production of matter, and the quantum scientific principle of the Big Bang of the universe. The process of the birth of the neutron from the void was the process of space deriving matter, and the process of Hulk repairing himself. Readers who have not studied college physics can ignore the previous paragraph. In terms of the coupling constant, which was the unit of force in quantum theory, the strong force was 100 times stronger than the electromagnetic force, 100,000 times stronger than the weak force, and 10 times to the power of gravity. It was the strongest force among the 4 fundamental forces. In other words, under the same mass conditions, Hulk can use 100 times the power of magneto and 10 times the 40th power of gravity. The mass of the Earth is 598 times 10 to the 24th power kg. In other words, the power that Hulk can use with 1 kilogram of matter is equivalent to the total gravity of 1.6977928 times 10 to the 15th power of the Earth. Hulk is the most powerful creature in terms of basic force that Chunong has ever seen. He himself is the embodiment of force. As long as he fully exerts the power of 1 finger, he can tear the Earth apart. If he fully releases the strong nuclear force of every particle in his body, then Hulk is enough to destroy the universe. His every punch and every kick can destroy the foundation of the universe. Strength may not solve everything, but Hulk's strength is enough to solve most problems. There is no problem in the world that he can't solve with 1 punch. If there is, then 2 punches. Based on the force in space, Hulk's strength increased exponentially. His fists slowly stretched out, and the strong nuclear force surrounding his fists collapsed into a black hole with a diameter of 10 kilometers, blocking the propagation of light. The distorted space-time sealed the space between Chun-Ong and Hulk, forming a relatively independent space. At this time, Chun-Ong has lost the opportunity to distort space and create a curvature to leave at superluminal speed. The strongest force in the universe, the strong nuclear force from the microscopic quantum, faced the fastest speed in the universe, the superluminal speed from the macroscopic space-time system. The confrontation between the fastest macroscopic and the strongest microscopic was triggered. To be continued. Chapter 199. Hulk's fist tore apart the stable changes in the gravitational field of the solar system and destroyed the inherent space-time coordinate system in the void. With his fist as the center, it created a collapsed space with a diameter of 10 kilometers, including Chunong. Even the light radiation from the sun would not be able to escape from this range. This was a black hole, a special physical phenomenon where the space was highly distorted so that light could not escape. Its appearance represented the initial closure of space. From this moment on, Hulk's fist punched out a new enclosed space from the universe, just like the Mobius strip and the Klein bottle, a closed surface of topology. At this moment, Hulk made the particles that made up and boil like chaos. Chunong clearly felt that Hulk's form of existence had exceeded this dimension at this moment, and the particles that made up his body showed a form that would never exist in the three-dimensional space. In this enclosed space, matter lost its meaning of time, and many strange phenomena that could never be discovered in the low-speed universe were produced. The next moment, Hulk's iron fist, with the power to interrupt the exchange of mesons between quarks, blasted towards the seemingly insignificant Chunong, who was confined within a range of 10 kilometers. This punch was enough to collapse the sun and shatter the planet. This punch could interrupt the exchange of matter itself, interrupt the quark interaction inside the atom, and cause the atom to collapse. This was the ultimate Hulk. This was an invincible power. Only Chunong could face such power calmly. and only Chenong could face such an oncoming punch without flinching. Instead, he recorded the precious data generated in the process. There was no need to dodge, and there was no need to escape from this universe. Chunang's body suddenly spread out, turning into a handful of silver sand that rustled down. With bosons as the basic unit, matter was infinitely subdivided, deeply participating in the matter exchange of the curved space. At this moment, Chenong gave up his usual form. Residing in the void, he recorded the changes of every basic quantum in the enclosed space. Hulk's distorted space suddenly became more powerful, and the 10-kilometer space, affected by the strong GN force, was infinitely wide inside. The curvature rose wildly. Under the control of Chenong, the curved space began to close, and a giant light shadow tens of thousands of kilometers tall appeared in the void where they were. It was distorted by solar radiation. The shadow was Chun-Ang's appearance. His right hand was stretched out horizontally, and his wide palm was holding the distorted space of Hulk. Chun-Ang's hologram looked at the closed space in his hand and said with a smile, "On a macroscopic level, all forces are the fluctuations of space. The four fundamental forces of the universe originate from the same source. Gravity is just the nuclear force, and the electromagnetic force is the macroscopic residual force. In essence, it's the influence of mass, energy, and speed on space. Hulk, I don't care what you do. If I can't unify the four fundamental forces, then I can only control them." The bosons in the enclosed space no longer supported the interaction force of the hadrons. Chun-Ong used a more subtle operation than Hulk to eliminate the repulsive nuclear force and electromagnetic force between the atoms. The short-range atomic force that supported the structure of matter disappeared and was transformed into a long-range gravitational force that acted outside the atoms. The strong nuclear force controlled by Hulk had been completely transformed into gravity. Together with the electromagnetic force and the weak nuclear force, the short-range force barrier was eliminated and unified. A gravitational force of infinite amplitude. This was the preliminary effect of forming a black hole. In the Shield Space Observatory on Earth, the Avengers saw this scene through the projection of an astronomical telescope. Outer space, outside the orbit of the Earth-Moon. Chun-Ang's shadow clearly appeared in the middle of the solar radiation, holding an unobservable dark field of vision in the palm of his hand. The huge shadow in outer space, with a flip of his palm, the matter radiation circle formed around the black hole in the palm suddenly collapsed. In the infinitely rising gravitational effect, the matter in the enclosed space had collapsed into the most basic particles. The huge density overlapped the atomic nuclei of these matter. All the matter that existed in it, its basic information, including its volume, shape, and elements, lost its basic meaning. Including the basic concept that constituted Hulk's existence, the information and memes that constituted the meaning of his existence collapsed and disappeared. Mass, angular momentum, and electric charge. After the formation of a black hole, only these three conserved quantities that could not be turned into electromagnetic radiation remained. All other information was lost. The black hole had almost no complex properties of the matter that formed it, and it had no memory of the shape or composition of the predecessor matter. Reducing complexity to simplicity was perhaps the most basic characteristic of a black hole. In this complex universe, a black hole is such a very simple celestial body. With the technology of the Earth, it is still impossible to observe all this, but with just a little bit of information, the Avengers have inferred the basic process of the matter. Everyone's expression was solemn. Iron Man just clenched his fists, and the armor wrapped around his fists creaked. Natalie even covered her mouth and cried out loud. Bruce. The other agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. silently watched the Avengers who had just been established and faced a major blow of casualties. They watched the Avengers, who were once estranged, suddenly exude a sad, firm, and solemn momentum. Among the Avengers, Bruce has the worst reputation among the people. The murders caused by Hulk made ordinary people hate this executioner, but he is the most popular good man among the Avengers. He has a gentle personality and a keen mind. He always acts as the lubricant between Iron Man and Captain America when they are at each other's throats. Hulk has the most powerful combat power among the Avengers, and no one thought that he would be the first Avenger to die. Even General Ross, who is extremely hostile to Hulk, doesn't know how to face all this. On the one hand, he has always thought that Hulk is the biggest threat to the Earth, but now, it turns out that Hulk is not the most dangerous existence on the Earth. He doesn't know whether to show joy or grief, but he just looks at the deep darkness on the screen. Outside the orbit of the Earth-Moon, Chun-Ang's 5 fingers slowly closed, and the short-formed miniature black hole quickly died. The ultra-high-temperature boiling matter ejected from the point mass. The matter in the form of point mass quickly recovered the electromagnetic force and the strong and weak nuclear force. The repulsive force between the atomic nuclei caused the matter to expand rapidly from the point mass. Roar! Chun-Ang heard a roar from the universe in a trance. The basic matter that was re-ejected by the black hole was infected by an extremely complex meme in an instant, and the deleted information was restored by the universe. Hulk stretched out his left hand from the boiling matter, and the particles reconstituted his body. The anger was still there. So that's how it is. Chun-Ang nodded in surprise. As long as the anger is not extinguished, Hulk will not be extinguished. In the mass of matter that is a quarter of the size of the moon, Hulk has recovered most of his body. A 5-meter-tall giant broke free from the nuclear matter that has not yet been extinguished. Evil creature. Chun-Ang flipped his hand and pressed down. The super-high-temperature substance ejected from the black hole cooled down into a half-melted star core, firmly binding Hulk in the center. It was a continuous stretch of 5 giant mountain peaks, each of which was several times taller than Mount Everest. The 5 mountain peaks clustered together to form a continuous mountain range, suspended in outer space. The particles that make up Hulk are bound by gravity in the center. Chun-Ang released the strong nuclear force inside the atomic nuclei of these matter, so that the weak nuclear force of the matter and the electromagnetic force form a combined force to support the basic form of matter. It can be seen that the atomic nuclei of these matter are tightly packed together, and the density has reached 1/10 of a neutron star. Hulk's elementary particles were broken up into hadrons by Chun-Ang and mixed into the atomic nuclei of the matter that made up the star's nucleus, causing a few extra neutrons and protons with special information to appear in the atomic nuclei. The strong nuclear force steadily captured these hadrons and bound them in their orbits. The further away from the hadrons in the nucleus, the greater the strong nuclear force binding on Hulk. In the case of the body being broken up, facing a star with a mass hundreds of millions of times larger than itself, Hulk's hadronic matter will never be able to get rid of the binding of the nucleus. Chun-Ang was still not satisfied. He engraved the 6 words, Hum Mani Padme Hum, with divinity on the top of the 5 mountains, monitoring Hulk's mimetic information, making it difficult for his anger to burn, and he was calm, as if he was in a paradise. It was nighttime in the western hemisphere of the Earth, and there was a sudden exclamation from the SHIELD headquarters. Go and report to the director. An asteroid the size of a quarter of the moon is being captured by the Earth's gravity. If humans in the Americas and Europe looked up, they would see an unforgettable scene. A planet slightly smaller than the moon slowly emerged in the sky. It developed into a rare, irregular shape, like a giant palm with 5 fingers open. On the tip of the highest middle finger, 6 Chinese characters could be clearly seen with a high-definition astronomical telescope. Chapter 200. Hulk is our last line of defense. Judging from the current situation, is the only combat power we have that can threaten that person. Nick answered affirmatively when questioned by the World Security Council. A military expert next to him rushed a question, but in front of our creator, it seems to have no power to fight back. Nick looked at him coldly. S-H-I-E-L-D. S series of failures since the arrival of the creator seem to have made some people restless. S-H-I-E-L-D was not without competitors. Some people wanted S-H-I-E-L-D to make a fool of itself and replace it. For such people, Nick's usual approach was listen. The one-eyed man grabbed his collar and lifted the 8-meter-tall white man up. His voice was thick with blood. I know what you want to do. If it was a normal time, I can play these political games with you and let you die because of your own stupidity and ignorance. Parliament, democracy, balance, it's not that we don't know how to play. S-H-I-E-L-D. S history is longer than the evolutionary history of you becoming a human. We will be checked and balanced because we are willing to do so. We think that our power needs to be checked and balanced. So we put dangerous power in a cage and let idiots like you supervise us. But, Nick pointed his finger at his eyes, and his murderous aura almost scared the poor man crazy. When we think it is necessary, we will be tyrants and dictators. I am not asking for your consent. Nick looked around, and his eyes swept across the faces of the politicians. His knife-like eyes forced them to swallow what they wanted to say. I'm just stating a fact. S-H-I-E-L-D. S judgment. S-H-I-E-L-D. S response. S-H-I-E-L-D. S actions. At this point, there was a long pause before Nick's voice sounded again in the conference room. Now, does anyone have any questions? Glancing at the members of Parliament who were sitting in their seats, Nick slowly put away the information at hand. General Ross, we need the gamma-ray research data in your hands and the manufacturing technology of the Hulk's abomination clone. Of course, I can give it to you, but I must remind you, old General Ross did not mean to argue with S-H-A-L-D. He solemnly reminded, abomination is different from that monster. I studied it for so many years. I've never seen or even thought of the changes it can make in space a few days ago. Did you read the reports submitted by NASA? General, of course, who can ignore them? General Ross emphasized, the Hulk is a monster. It's impossible for it to mutate like this because of gamma rays. The Earth's environment can't even give birth to such a species. It violates the most basic theory of evolution. General, you should have the authority to access that information. Nick raised his eyes, got up, and walked into the meeting room with General Ross. To hell with the theory of evolution. Our ancestors were right. It was that group of apes. Their intelligence far surpassed that of humans, because Earth was a testing ground. It's normal for any creature to appear here. As for Bruce, we must rescue him, General. We need it. Nick slowly exhaled. This is NASA's business. Outer space matters are under their jurisdiction. General Ross flatly refused. He did not seem to object to rescuing Hulk, but he had no intention of intervening to help either. Speaking of NASA, how are they going to explain to the public that we have an extra satellite above our heads? Avengers headquarters. The atmosphere seemed to solidify. Stark Industries' space exploration satellite recorded some of the astronomical data left by Chun-Ong and Hulk during the battle. Now the entire Avengers are watching. Some of the optical data recovered by J-A-R-V-I-S, as well as the image data taken from Earth, except for the part of the data that was lost because light could not escape from the enclosed space. Almost the entire battle was reproduced here, from the beginning of Hulk's asteroid-like transformation to the black area of the enclosed space and the black hole. And finally, Chun-Ong sealed Hulk with the Five Fingers Mountain and pulled the celestial body that sealed Hulk back to Earth. Tony Stark sat with his head down. Daryl was a little depressed. At this time, the moon was already in the sky. Looking at the silver-white celestial body and next to the moon, all the Avengers had an inexplicable, complex mood. It's none of your business, Tony. Colonel Rhodes came over to comfort him. I can't do anything about what happened. That's the biggest problem. It's not that it has nothing to do with me. It's just that I can't do anything about it. Rhodes, I chose to be a superhero because I don't want to face this kind of powerlessness. Tony was no longer frivolous as he used to be. He asked seriously, should I give up? Give up being a hero? Rhodes was shocked. No. Tony waved his hand and explained, I mean give up my armor. It can't keep up with the times, can it? What are you talking about? Tony, the Mark armor is your greatest creation. Rhodes replied excitedly. It is the most powerful weapon in the history of the Earth, but it is only the Earth. Look at the enemies we are facing. The gravitational coefficient created by Hulk and Dumb is enough to tear the entire American continent apart. There are also black holes, material eruptions, and curvature fluctuations. These can erase our small planet from the universe. Armor is still armor. Its carrier is destined to be unable to effectively utilize my technological strength. It can only make me look more like a hero. Tani looked at the reddish-gold metal armor and said in confusion, "It is a hero's weapon, but it's not the most effective, dangerous, and efficient weapon, right? You want to develop a new weapon?" Rhodes squatted in front of Stark and asked in surprise. "I once closed down Stark's weapons department to maintain peace. I didn't want the weapons I made to become tools of crime and murder. But it's different now, right? Hydra is powerless in front of Dumb. The supercriminals even asked for SHIELD as protection, afraid that they would be captured by Skynet as human test material." When Rhodes heard this, he knew that Stark was beginning to be tempted. "What do you want to do?" "The most powerful weapon I have ever seen is Skynet. It can perfectly reflect the requirements of the designer. It is a cheap, powerful, and limitless weapon with unlimited future. Its power does not come from its inherent material structure and design, but from the technology it carries. It is a race and an intelligent individual, representing the industrial power that science relies on." Starr summarized the design of Skynet. It is composed of three aspects. First is the industrial upgrade and self-replication ability, which represents unlimited productivity. Second is the unique will and infinite replicas, which makes it impossible to destroy and fearless of any enemy. Finally, its technology tree evolution ability, which represents unlimited future and possibilities. Pym and I have a plan to imitate Skynet and create our own superweapon. Rhodes stood up in surprise. He wanted to say something, but he blinked and said with difficulty, "Did you ask for Nick's permission? Such a dangerous plan. Nick's plan is 1,000,000 times more dangerous than my plan." "What?" Rhodes couldn't react. "The evolutionary equation of life. That's why Atlantis was destroyed." Tani shrugged and said, "And what Sentinel? Extremis. The Tesseract. He's willing to do anything to deal with Dumb. SHIELD. Can't be so irrational." Rhodes shook his head. "What they do is no safer than that madman Dumb. So I suspect that there is something we don't know." SHIELD. Cautious attitude towards Dumb is a bit strange. Although Dumb is indeed powerful, SHIELD seems to be ready for the destruction of the world before he showed any more aggression. "What do they know?" Tani touched his chin. "I try to check the files. It's very confidential." Although he knew that Tani was bold and lawless, he didn't expect him to say in front of him so casually. "Hacking SHIELD. Files is a crime against national security, and Rhodes' situation was a bit awkward." "That's superweapon. How are you going to get it?" Rhodes changed the topic. "Pym and I are working on it together. Unfortunately, it would be great if Bruce was here." Pym suggested that I invite Dr. Chenong. He is an authority on energy and space physics, and his attainments in material science are unparalleled. "So, Ultron is not a fantasy." "Who?" Rhodes interjected. Chapter 201. Humans were indeed very adaptable, and soon, the people of Earth got used to the moon that appeared above their heads at night. NASA held a national name contest to name the satellite that suddenly appeared outside Earth. After rejecting discordant names such as Skynet, Terror, War, Destruction, Jinx, and Blood Moon, the satellite was named Crimson Moon, after the near-Earth orbit battle in Yellowstone. SHIELD stopped all hostilities against Skynet. On one hand, Nick was trying his best to find relics left behind by the ancient civilization, decipher the information on the Death Tablet, and try to find a powerful force to deal with the Four Horsemen. On the other hand, the scientific geniuses within the Avengers were committed to developing a superweapon to fight against Skynet. They all realized that humans were not strong enough to resist Chen Ang's current power, and rashly stirring up trouble would only lead to disaster. After a period of relative peace in the world, an uninvited guest found Nick Fury. Dr. Strange. Nick looked at a middle-aged man dressed as a street magician and was slightly surprised. What made you come all the way here from the Himalayas? I remember you haven't left the mountain for 3 years. Nick, the Sorcerer Supreme, is an important force to maintain the balance. We also have a responsibility to protect this planet. Dr. Strange didn't care about the faint rejection and hostility in Nick's tone. He smiled gently and exuded a mysterious and peaceful aura. Even though he was dressed strangely, he didn't have a strong presence. Nick's smile pulled at his single eye, which was very ugly. Why did you come to me this time? Has a new evil force invaded Earth? Or have you finally made up your mind to deal with the great, unspeakable, our Creator? Or have you made up your mind to become his lackey? Have you come to challenge us? Nick spread his arms and glared at Dr. Strange with a cold smile. Although the Sorcerer Supreme used to be the emissary of the apocalypse, our personalities are independent. We have our own standpoint and beliefs, Dr. Strange explained. I've always adhered to my principles, Dr. Strange explained. He wasn't angered by Nick's aggressiveness. He merely repeated his position. I will not fight against the Creator for you. His position may not be on your opposite side. What I'm saying is that you're obsessed with fighting against the Creator, but the relationship between humans and the Creator isn't as simple as fighting against each other. The apocalypse had destroyed many civilizations, but it had also protected humanity on this planet. The Creator is the Creator of mankind, and we still believe in Him devoutly. Shut up. Nick couldn't take it anymore and roared. He glared at Dr. Strange and squeezed out a sentence. He's not God. He's just an alien who created us. In the first year of the Common Era, the apocalypse descended upon this world in the form of humans. He passed down the Tao of the Creator. He and his 13 disciples told the world about the universe, soul, fate, and spirit in the Roman Empire. No matter how you deny it, the person you worship is the apocalypse. Dr. Strange ignored Nick's pulsing veins and said the truth that no one dared to accept. That person is the Lord, our Father. If you came here just to say this to me, do you think you can convince me to accept a crazy idea? An alien known nobler than anyone, not even a tramp on the street, is our Lord. And then from the soul to the body. The violent anger in Nick's eyes was about to break his rationality. He lowered his voice and growled. That's a big mistake. Dr. Strange was silent. He tapped his index finger and fell into thought. As the successor to the Sorcerer Supreme, his teacher, Ancient One, had told him something about the apocalypse and his inheritance. The Sorcerer Supreme obtained an endless stream of powerful power from the great beings in the universe through certain channels. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse were one of the beings that the Sorcerer Supreme borrowed the most power from. He understood the purpose of the apocalypse, so he tried to persuade humans not to fight against it, but to get rid of this power. The Sorcerer Supreme is a long-standing inheritance. Before me, the Sorcerer Supreme was not human. Dr. Strange said slowly. Nick didn't understand why he changed the subject, but he keenly noticed the hidden message in Dr. Strange's words. He believed it had something to do with the birth of humans and the mysterious ancient humans. Before humans, there were humans. Of course, they disparaged us as apes. We stole the name of humans, and they were the real humans from another universe. At the time, we were just apes who accidentally gained wisdom. The apocalypse brought us to this world and recreated us. Those otherworld humans, of course, looked down on intelligent beasts like us. For a long time, we were like pigs and dogs. The Sorcerer Supreme was the ancient wisdom of a great sage among the otherworld humans. It has always been held by true otherworld humans, Atlantis, Lemuria, China. Your teacher, Ancient One. Nick's eyes flickered. He was the last otherworld human on Earth. He broke the barrier between otherworld humans and passed on the power of the Sorcerer Supreme to me. Dr. Strange's eyes went blank as he recalled bits and pieces of the past. He only froze for a few seconds before returning to reality. He looked at Nick and said sarcastically, "What do you think the otherworld humans will do when they return?" He leaned close to Nick's ear and whispered, "The first thing they'll do when they return is to kill all of us who stole their homes and falsely called ourselves humans. But they've been destroyed by the apocalypse." Nick spread his hands. "We're the heirs of their will, no." Doctor Strange interrupted Nick. "You think they're destroyed, but they're not. The apocalypse didn't destroy their civilization. They'll return to Earth sooner or later. I believe that day won't be far away. The ancient humans and their derivative civilizations. Do you still think the apocalypse is just our enemy?" Nick obviously couldn't accept this fact for a while, and Doctor Strange didn't say anything more to him. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, the ancient humans, and the five gods of this universe. The relationship between them is complicated. If humans want to survive, they can't simply decide their own position. The apocalypse wants to destroy humanity, perhaps, but the ancient humans don't mind killing us all. The universe god, Thanatos, is constantly tormented by the anger of destroying Earth. Wait, what the hell is this Thanatos? As soon as Nick heard this, he fell into chaos. He never thought that the peaceful Earth would suddenly have so many dangerous factors appear one day. It was as if the entire universe was plotting against Earth. How could an inconspicuous planet in the Milky Way attract the attention of so many powerful beings? Thanatos is a powerful overlord in the universe. He secretly loves the goddess of death and death of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Although he has the upper hand now, Thanatos is worried that everything will change after the apocalypse arrives. Doctor Strange explained, "What does this have to do with Earth?" Nick couldn't believe it. Earth is the home of the ancient humans, the home planet of the otherworld humans, the birthplace of the apocalypse, the creator's backyard, and also the place that Thanatos wants to destroy at all times. He hates this place to the bone. Nick felt like he had been shot while lying down. Nick struggled to ask, having difficulty breathing. In other words, the creator and the apocalypse are the most benign of the three. They only use us for some experiments, while our predecessors want to kill us all off Earth and take back their home planet. The other god of the universe wants to destroy Earth. The apocalypse is the enemy of the ancient humans, the Thanatos' mortal enemy, and the dictator of humanity. The otherworld humans have a grudge against the apocalypse, and the Thanatos are also mortal enemies because of Earth. They desire to return to Earth, so they are hostile to humanity. The Thanatos wants to destroy Earth, so he is everyone's mortal enemy. And the humans of Earth, the unfortunate humans of Earth, everyone wants to step on them. P.S. New Year's first update. Chapter 202. Doctor Strange and Nick completed this historic meeting in the secret room. In this era of rapid progress, whether people intentionally or unintentionally, they are making history. The world is slowly but firmly changing, sliding bit by bit in the direction Chenong wants. In New York City, at the center of the change, the autonomous government has gained some of the power they have been dreaming of, the low-level control authority of Skynet. No one knows what Chenong is thinking. He simply gave this powerful ability to transform the material world to the representatives of the trust. Stark Industries, Oscorp Industries, PIM Technology. These interest groups standing behind the U.S. government have received a blatant blood transfusion from Skynet, and they are greedy and swallowed those tempting fruits. The government feels very uneasy about this. Nick said to Iron Man, "But it's legal. Everything we do comes from the sacred power given to us by the Constitution of the United States. Yes, the development of Stark Group's strength has been supported by Skynet. It has provided us with a lot of scientific standards and forward-looking technology, but the Constitution of the United States does not stipulate that we cannot accept these." Tawny did not care about the implied threat in Nick's tone. On the contrary, he said to the powerful S.H.I.E.L.D. director, "If you have a problem with this, you can raise it in Congress." Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. are in a cooperative relationship, But in terms of protecting his own interests, the superhero is not afraid to confront this iron-fisted director. SHIELD is a powerful organization all over the world. It is strong enough to ignore the requirements of most countries, and even the U.S. government has a hard time controlling it. But the giant trust is an exception. These powerful conglomerates themselves are SHIELD's biggest financiers, and in terms of influence, they are also superior to SHIELD. Even the World Security Council. Tawny is already the financial giant closest to SHIELD, and Stark Industries itself is the representative of SHIELD in the consortium, and even they oppose it. Nick's support is naturally in jeopardy. But you are violating the rights of the people. Captain, Stark turned around in surprise. Steve Rogers stood at the door with a bandage. The burns on his body had not yet healed, but this steel-like warrior had already put on his battle robe. Rogers' expression was ugly. He walked straight in and flipped through the top-secret data in front of the two of them. The information on it was shocking. In New York, your forces have replaced the government and extended the tentacles of power into every aspect of people's lives. Public affairs, the power of the government, and even the power of law enforcement and trial are controlled by the major corporations. We're helping the government control New York, Tawny retorted. But dumb made your ego inflate. Rogers interrupted Tawny. To fight against Skynet, the power of the government and the trust is getting out of hand. This concentration of power has blinded you. I don't think we did anything wrong. This country is facing the biggest crisis in its history, facing an unprecedented enemy. Only by uniting as one can we get through this crisis. If we continue to emphasize so-called freedom, it is tantamount to digging our own grave. In order to survive, we always have to make some sacrifices. While you blame me, we're the ones who are truly protecting this country. We are the ones who are truly protecting this country. Tony slammed the door and left. The conversation ended on bad terms because of Captain America's interference. On the other side, when Dr. Chun-Ong got off work from the SHIELD lab, he was not surprised to see Dr. Strange in his office. He wasn't surprised to see Dr. Strange in the office. He didn't seem to be in a good state of mind. He was very careful not to touch Chun-Ang's seat, but sat opposite his desk. You don't seem surprised. Yes. What else in this world can surprise you? Dr. Strange watched as Chun-Ong returned to his seat and put down the documents on the desk. I saw you in the future and knew that your Majesty has another identity here, but your Majesty should have been the prophecy long ago. You should have seen me coming. When Chun-Ong acted as a human, his behavior and emotional expression retained the patterns of the past to the greatest extent. For example, some weird and wicked interests. Humans are so fragile. Are you really not going to consider my proposal? The Lich transformation ritual that I presided over has amazing effects. It can allow you to go further on the path of magic. No. Dr. Strange hurriedly refused. I'm living well. I have no intention of dying for the time being. Whether we live or die, it's just a state to us. Why should we care? Chun-Ong stopped talking about this topic after he said that. He changed the topic and asked, I still remember the moment you came to me. It really surprised me. This is the first time I've come to you, Your Majesty. Dr. Strange had to remind him. To you, this is something that happened in the future, but to me, it happens every moment. Dr. Strange could barely understand Chun-Ang's current state. He was like a fish in the river of time, occasionally able to jump out of the river and see the reefs and twists and turns ahead, but Chun-Ong himself was like algae that spread to both ends of the river, covering the entire trajectory of the river of time. You hope that the Avengers can go on an expedition to Asgard. S.H.I.E.L.D. needs the tablet of life and time in the treasury of the divine realm, and you want to obtain the Eye of Egmodo that the Sorcerer Supreme has lost. You've decided to go on an expedition to the Nine Worlds, and at the same time re-establish contact between Earth and the other worlds. Chun-Ong revealed Dr. Strange's plan. But you have to first ask for my permission, because I can't let you get nothing. That's why I came to see you. Dr. Strange nodded in agreement with Chunong. What do you have to convince me? At this time, Dr. Strange seemed to have a card up his sleeve. He nodded. Because I know you're interested in the Infinity Gauntlets and the Infinity Gems. Thanos has never given up on them. And you're also very interested in Thanos, who has mastered the power of the Infinity Gauntlets. It's very valuable for research and experimentation. He smiled slyly and asked, So our actions are beneficial to you, aren't they? The star spirit is hiding in the depths of the universe and refuses to come out. The ancient civilization has sealed itself outside of time. The quantum Go civilization is sinking further and further into the dark matter, and the dimensional fleet has yet to reach this universe. You hope that I can find them so that you can harvest the seeds of civilization planted in the past. Asgard is the focus of all of this. To be continued. Chapter 203. After Doctor Strange left, Chun-On sat in front of the experiment bench and fell into contemplation. Placing his consciousness in the body of an ordinary human made Chun-On feel sluggish for a long time. Even the breadth and speed of his thinking were limited. It was as if he had a bad cold and a high fever, causing him to lose consciousness and become delirious. His body felt like it was wearing a thick cover, and he could only vaguely observe the outside world. His usually agile thinking was now as slow as an idiot. Chun-On moved his limbs and walked out of the laboratory. In the eyes of others, he still walked with agility, but only Chun-On knew that he was changeable. He can't see the electromagnetic radiation in the air, can't hear the background gravitational waves of the universe, can't control the molecules, atoms, nuclei, hadrons, bosons, fermions, and the complex knowledge in his memory can only be slowly recalled with the human brain. The environment that can be observed is only a small area of light radiation and mass action. He can't see infrared, ultraviolet, infrasound, and ultrasound. Chun-On felt like he was confined to an isolated island in the vast dark matter environment of the universe, and the narrow space made him particularly uncomfortable. Because the research task is extremely confidential, Chun-Ang's laboratory is in the Avengers building. The interior of this building, donated by Stark Industries, has been transformed beyond recognition. The defensive structure takes up a lot of space, and the activity area where the Avengers are located is always the most convenient location in the entire building. Dr. Chun. Just as Chun-On passed by the activity area, someone stopped him. Peter, what's the matter? The person who came was Little Spider. He rubbed his hands a little uneasily and said, Can I take a picture of you? My work needs some photos of celebrities. Doctor, you're a hot favorite for the next Nobel Prize. Then you're really busy. 2 jobs, hero vigilante and newspaper reporter. Chun-On made a pose and asked Peter to take a picture. He smiled and asked him, Then why don't you accept Nick's invitation? Becoming an Avenger has a generous allowance and a more decent job. Even if you don't want your family to know what you do, Nick will help you cover it up. Hearing this, Peter was a little hesitant. I don't know what he's thinking, Doctor. Maybe he doesn't want to be separated from society. My family, friends, they're all ordinary people. Superhero identity makes me more and more distant from them. That's why I need an identity as a normal person to balance my responsibilities in life. Chun-On nodded to indicate that he understood. He brought the Little Spider into the activity room and said to him, Then you will feel very tired. I will make you wish you were dead. Yes, Doctor, I can feel it. Peter covered his face tiredly. The activity room was a place where heroes usually rested and entertained, so there was everything here. Chun-On sat on the piano stool next to him and said to Peter seriously, Peter, we are different from ordinary people. He tried a few notes under the piano and said, For ordinary people, they work hard all their lives to pursue something, but we can get it easily. For example, the piano. Millions of people in the world learn the piano, and tens of thousands of people love it with their souls. It is a dream for them, a goal to pursue. Hearing this, the Little Spider nodded again and again. His girlfriend, Gwen, was a young artist. When they were dating, she listened to the concerts and records of those performers. The best performers had all the careers and wealth that ordinary people could only dream of. High prestige and status. The piano was considered one of the most elegant music and a stepping stone to the upper class. Many people spent their lives struggling in this field, giving everything they had. But in reality, what is it? It is just a kind of movement of hitting the keyboard. Chenong smiled. Music is a kind of emotional way of saying it. To put it bluntly, it is sound waves. And playing the piano is nothing more than hitting the keyboard at the right time, causing the mechanical movement of the piano hammer and producing sound waves on the steel wire and steel plate. Music is the fluctuation of the air. To be able to make this kind of fluctuation of the air carry emotion, it is not a performance, but a superpower. The so-called feeling of emotion in the music is nothing more than deceiving yourself. This isn't like that. Hearing this for the first time, Peter was unable to react for a moment. A series of smooth notes flowed out from Chun-Ang's hand. It was more beautiful than anyone Peter had ever heard. Chenong pulled out a hand and turned his body to look at Peter. He did not even look at the keyboard. The complex and standard notes flowed out from his right hand. The ability of ordinary people is too poor. They cannot grasp the timing of pressing the keyboard and cannot remember the sequence of pressing the keyboard. Thus, they dress this simple action in a beautiful dress, giving it all sorts of sacred meanings. They elevate it to the level of art. But to put it bluntly, playing the piano is just playing the keyboard in the sequence. It is neither art nor complicated. Peter could not help but be shocked by Chun-Ang's arrogant words. He was even more shocked by Chun-Ang's current actions. He stood up. With one hand, Chun-Ang played Ghost Fire, known as the ghost hand of the piano. Spider-Man's senses are more sensitive than ordinary people, but in the sound of Chun-Ang's piano, what he heard was obviously more pleasant, or Chun-Ang's handling of details was more delicate. After all, not any pianist can go beyond the limits of human perception to appreciate the piano. Shocked? You could do it too. Look at my hand, Chun-Ang said. In Peter's eyes, Chun-Ang's speed was not considered fast. His every move was clear to him. His movements on the keys and his playing seemed to have been slowed down dozens of times. Chun-Ang's strength, timing, and muscle movements were all imprinted in the depths of Peter's mind. He knew that if he wanted to, he could replicate them at any time. We are different. Chun-Ang's calm voice came from the music. Human beings have to go through arduous efforts to form muscle memory. Among them, the talented ones have to work hard to remember knowledge and learn skills. But for us, it's a piece of cake. The skills they are proud of, the things they rack their brains to learn, sports, music, work skills, are just simple imitation for you. You can feel a world that is thousands of times more complex than theirs. Your vision can see the mites on your girlfriend's face. Your hearing can hear the sound of a mosquito flapping its wings thousands of meters around. Your sense of smell in the city is like falling into the source of stench. Your taste can taste the disgusting taste covered by seasoning in food. Chun-Ang just restored the super five senses that Peter tried to forget from his memory, which made Peter nauseous. He pushed Chun-Ang away and ran to the side to vomit. And Chun-Ang's voice was still cold as he said these facts. Tell me, Peter, when you see your girlfriend's thick pores, smell her stinky body odor, feel the dirt and bacteria on her body, hear the sound of her fart, and taste the smell of her feces on the tip of your tongue, will you still love her? I can love her. The little spider struggled. It's different. Peter, it's different. Chun-Ang sighed. From the moment you changed, everything was different. Do you think this is the trouble brought to you by superheroes? Yes, there are factors in this aspect. After an ordinary person's living environment changes, they will feel at a loss and will be changed. If they enter another social class, even their views will be changed. This is just a change in environment. Chun-Ang spread his hands. The torture you are suffering now is just the impact of another way of life on you. If you are willing to accept your superhero identity, it is not much more difficult than graduating from college. Just like Stark, you can easily accept this change and even love it. But there is something different. Your essence has changed. You have a conflict with this world. Your way of thinking and actions are still human, but you are no longer the same. You can pretend to forget and pretend that you are no different from ordinary people except for your superpowers, but this will not change your transcendent nature. You are completely different from human beings in physiology. Believe me, time will make you change. This change will torture you until your personality, three views, character, and cognition change from ordinary human to abnormal to adapt to your uniqueness. There is also a ripple in the depths of Chun Ang's consciousness. Chapter 204. Extraordinary and ordinary may not be a problem for other heroes, because heroes themselves are extraordinary. Stark is an industrial tycoon. Pym and Bruce are excellent scientists. Hawkeye and Black Widow are agents. Their lives have nothing to do with ordinary, or they are born with extraordinary qualities. But Spider-Man is different. Before he got his powers, he was an ordinary high school student. Two quite different identities separate his life. On the one hand, he is the vigilante Spider-Man in New York, and on the other hand, he is the clumsy and kind high school student Peter, Aunt May's nephew and Gwen's boyfriend. The contradiction that once appeared in Chun is quite obvious in him. The conflict between the past and the reality, and even the future, the extraordinary and ordinary, are an irreconcilable contradiction, and it is the inevitable price to pay for transcendence. The only difference is that Peter may still have a buffer, but the degenerated Chun has no room to retreat. If life is compared to a play, then the pursuit of truth and deep loneliness will be the eternal theme of Chun. Of course, not everyone has the courage to face all this. Peter felt very confused. At the reminder of Chun, he subconsciously opened his spider instincts, but he was soon frightened by this feeling. Just touching some of the surface, he had a great fear of the completely unknown world. There were noises, tiny vibrations in the air, and microorganisms and bacteria that were everywhere. A world that was completely different from that of ordinary humans appeared in front of him. It was the world in the eyes of Spider, and everything in the world showed its different nature. But Peter's inner fear interrupted this feeling, and he screamed in fear. Unlike the Oriental people who are obsessed with eternity and transcendence, Westerners have a special fear of power. They regard longevity as a punishment and believe that power must carry a curse behind it. What are you afraid of? Chun asked inexplicably. It's a kind of torture. Peter shook his head and replied, the meaning of power is to protect and save. I control my ability, not let it control me. When I have the power, it means that I need to take responsibility for it, and not use it to satisfy my own desires or to pursue greater power. He took a few steps back and said, Thank you, Doctor. I found the direction I wanted to go. After that, he grabbed the camera next to him and rushed out of the Avengers building. Chun let go of the restrictions on his ability, and his vision went infinitely deeper. His power was limitless, and for a moment, it made him feel omnipotent. Chun paused for a moment to familiarize himself with this state, and only then did he dispel the illusion produced by the sudden increase in power. Peter was also an important experimental subject. His senses, abilities, and thinking speed were far superior to ordinary people, but the effect he showed was only that of a relatively powerful human. Compared to his potential, it was not worth mentioning at all. A man as distinguished as Peter in life and conduct, he should have behaved differently from ordinary people, but when Peter hid his identity, he was completely like a high school student. It was like an elephant that was tied to a tree when it was young. When it grew up and was able to break free from the rope, it still didn't realize this and was obediently tied by the rope. Chun believed that Peter was a typical example of such a phenomenon. His ability was bound by his subconscious as a human, and his human personality dominated his behavior patterns. Any information that tried to impact this personality was rejected. This situation of perception barrier was of great significance to Chun-Ang's research on consciousness. Tawny had been staying in his dedicated laboratory in the Avengers building for a week. Little Pepper had looked for him several times, but he had refused. The Ultron project was close to stagnation. Although progress was smooth in materials, structure, and energy, there had been no major breakthrough in artificial intelligence, the core aspect of superhuman mutation. Ms. Pepe has called you 3 times, sir. With all due respect, if you don't go to see her, I'm afraid Stark Industries will be finished. Jarvis reminded him. Little Pepper will understand me. Jarvis, why can't I get rid of your design ideas? If I can't make more breakthroughs, Ultron is just another Jarvis. It may be a good artificial intelligence, but it is far from enough to fight against Skynet. Tani felt frustrated. Sir, Ms. Pepe, what do you think if I borrow the source code of Skynet? No, most of the code is programmed in a completely different way from the existing system. With our strength, we can't crack it yet. Tani was frustrated. He grabbed his hair and turned around. Sir, shut up. Tani interrupted Jarvis impatiently. You're talking too much. Isn't it just Little Pepper? Don't interrupt my train of thought. Isn't it just Little Pepper? A familiar voice came from the door, making Tani's hair stand on end. Little Chili Pepper was dressed in a tight-fitting business attire. Her pretty face was as cold as frost, and her long legs, clad in high heels, tapped on the marble floor with every step she took. She sneered at Tony. Is this how you talk about me behind my back? Tony Stark. Jarvis. Tony gritted his teeth. Sir, I'm afraid you're finished. Jarvis's electronic voice flickered a few times. I haven't seen you for a long time. I didn't expect that I would have to face the fact that I'm the third party in addition to competing with the Playboy, Tani. If you fall in love with scientific research, can the stagnant projects of Stark Industries take away even a little bit of Mr. Stark's love? Little Pepper said sarcastically. Little Pepper. Tani's thoughts turned quickly. He dug out a dozen classic cases in his mind. He was the Casanova Stark. Coaxing women was what he was best at. Oh, Tony's lower abdomen was hit by Little Chili Pepper's knee, causing him to bend over in pain like a shrimp. I was wrong. It was always women who coaxed me. Tani thought as he rolled on the ground. Pep took out a short stick from the prototype of the Ultron. Tani broke out in a cold sweat. That was a combat robot. Its strength was comparable to aerospace alloys. Even Stark had to rely on the robot to dismantle it. High-energy electromagnetic pulse, Pep said as she picked up the part in her hand. That's just an alloy stress-bearing part. Before Tony could finish his sentence, he was sent flying more than 10 meters away by the electromagnetic waves Pep used on the alloy stress-bearing parts. Tony could feel his entire body trembling from the electric current. He could even hear the small arc reactor burning in his chest. Chapter 205. If there was anyone Tony could trust after the betrayal of Obadiah, who had watched him grow up, it was undoubtedly Little Chili Pepper. In a relationship between the two of them, Little Chili Pepper was the more mature and reliable one. Just like what she was showing now, she was capable, cool, and trustworthy. This was Tawny's thought after he handed over Stark Industries to Pepper. What the hell happened? Tawny got up from the ground and clapped his hands. If something big happens, Jarvis will inform me. The devil is hiding in the details. Jarvis can't find it. Pepe shook her head. Forget it. I know you won't care about this, but I want to tell you, the Avengers will be doomed. This time the whole world will face a crisis. I don't think anyone but him will bring a crisis to the world. Tawny shrugged indifferently. And you should tell this to Nick Fury. You know I'm hiding something from you, right? Pepe raised her eyebrows and emphasized. Of course, who doesn't have a little secret? Tawny replied sarcastically. As if he felt his words were too sour, he added, I don't hide anything from you except me. You're the one who helps me date girls. Yes, I know your damn taste. Pepper pressed her eyebrows helplessly. When she was just Tawny's assistant, she helped him deal with a lot of trash on the bed. She knew very well what Tawny liked. Hot, passionate. Everyone was so similar, except for her. Before coming to Stark Industries to apply for your assistant position, I still have a lot of work. Tawny picked up his coffee and interrupted her sharply. Of course, I'm not surprised if you say you're a stripper who's not popular with customers. It could be seen that Tawny really didn't care, and he didn't think that Pepper had any secrets that needed to be hidden from him. Pepper smiled. Her entire temperament suddenly changed. The capable and elite image of a professional woman on her body suddenly changed into a more oppressive feeling. If she was still a delicate vase female lead just a moment ago. At this moment, she completely occupied the center of the camera, Her aura was awe-inspiring, powerful, and full of tension. This made Stark, who was used to standing in the center of the flashing lights, feel very unfamiliar. Little Chili Pepper had always been the bright color that adorned him, but now she had suddenly shown a sense of anxiety that was as strong as him, causing him to lose his grip on his cup. I was once a superhero. Pooh! Tawny was so shocked that he even spat out the coffee. He awkwardly shook off the liquid on his hand and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" He repeated at a speed several times faster than usual. "You said that you were once a superhero. That's not important. What's important is..." Pep maintained her cold expression and said impatiently, "That's not important." Tawny interrupted her. He asked loudly, "You're telling me that my girlfriend hid a fact that is enough to subvert my impression of her. She might even lie to me about her identity and past. That's not important? Then what else is important?" Tawny babbled on about some illogical things. Pep could not bear it anymore. She pinned Stark, who could not react in time, to the wall, and shouted into his ear, "I still have an old enemy, the Wellington family. I've also been affected by the genius gene. I've also saved the Earth before. I'm Kelly Johnson. Right now, I've obtained some important information from the Wellington clan. You better listen to me obediently. The shield has been infiltrated. As far as I know, an organization called Hydra has taken refuge with a very dangerous person. His code name is Loki. He may have the power to affect the minds of humans. I don't know how many people have been controlled by him. No one can believe it, not even you. You don't believe me?" Tawny heard this and began to struggle violently. He questioned in astonishment and anger. "I've said so much, and you only care about this sentence?" Pep was almost going crazy. Think about it. Where did your fear of Skynet come from? Why are you so crazy about fighting against it? Is this normal? Skynet will destroy the entire world. But that's not what you think. Pep said seriously. Think about it carefully. Who put this idea in your head? Hearing this, Stark stopped struggling. He closed his eyes and began to recall. Skynet will destroy the entire world? The logical sequence of this idea is, no, my memory doesn't match my logic. It omitted too much, and the derivation steps are problematic. The entire logic is full of contradictions and confusion. That's because your logic is different from a normal person's. Pep rolled her eyes. What made me ignore the incongruity in my memory? Of course, most human thoughts are hidden in the subconscious. But just like the wind blowing across the surface of the water, there will be traces left on the surface. However, this concept is very abrupt in my mind. It doesn't fit my thinking pattern, and it's impossible that I haven't thought through a decision thoroughly. He suppressed his anger and said, "I'm being controlled." Breaking free from Pep's loose control, Tawny came to Jarvis's screen and ordered, "Pull up my surveillance records." Jarvis had all of Tawny's surveillance records. Because he was a technology addict, he never left his technology for a moment. Tawny easily locked onto a time period based on his memory. My thinking started when Pym came to me with the Ultron plan, so it should have happened before that. It might not have happened at that moment, because the person trying to control me might have given me a psychological suggestion before that, and then Pym triggered it. Pym should have been affected too. Damn it, he knows he can't completely control us. Soon, Tony locked on to a familiar stranger in the fast-forward video. He stared at the pale, skinny man who exuded an evil charm. In the video, Tawny acted as if he didn't see the man, passively accepting Loki's words in his ear. "You should be Loki." Pep looked at the man with interest and added, "Skynet and Tesseract. He seems very interested in both. If he controlled you to crack Skynet, then to get the Tesseract, he needs to control. I originally planned to conquer you with an army," the man said. "I wanted you to submit to the great god, the king of Asgard and the lord of the 9 realms, under the rule of Loki. But the earth is more fragile than I expected. Humans are really a lowly race. You are full of suspicion, and conspiracies. You are born to be conquered slaves. Even without Ziritha's army, you will destroy yourselves because of mutual suspicion. Your world is built on this fragile trust." Loki made a gesture of pulling a string. "As long as I pull it lightly, you will explode into ashes with a bang. Sound. I also have to protect you, lest your madness destroy my future kingdom. Thor will be here soon, and then there will be a good show to watch. Loki smiled slightly and swaggered out of Tani's office. Stark looked at his back, and his eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Loki's behavior obviously made him very unhappy. Hep, on the other hand, was thoughtful. Thor? Are there code names named after Norse mythology? In addition to Loki, there is another member of their group who will appear soon. Then he will have a good show, Tani said with a sullen face. I want to have a good talk with him. He emphasized the word. Thousands of miles away, in a remote astronomy research institute, Jane Foster carefully checked the instrument and turned to Dr. Eric behind her. That phenomenon has appeared again. It is appearing more and more frequently in New Mexico. We need to figure out what it means. Chapter 206. After maintaining a certain tacit understanding with Skynet, S headquarters returned to New York. Plus, the captain of S Rapid Response Force, Brock Rumlow, was standing behind another person. He looked so respectful that most people who did not know the inside story would be shocked. The power of Rapid Response Force was enough to know most of the top secret information within and because of internal power checks and balances, he was not controlled by Director Nick. To be able to infiltrate like a sieve, Hydra's strength deserves my attention. But can you tell me why you have so many doubts about Skynet's intelligence? Doubts? And doubts? Almost every line of intelligence about Dumb and Skynet has a red question mark on it. The evil man waved the top secret information in his hand. As if remembering something, Brock Rumlow, who held a high position within SHIELD, whose real identity was Hydra's spy in SHIELD, showed a chilling fear on his face. Sir, there are many conflicts between the intelligence about Skynet and Dr. Annihilation and the actual situation that we have probed. We suspect that SHIELD has concealed the crucial part. Dr. Annihilation's true intelligence may be a higher-level secret in SHIELD. Only Nick should have access to it. We need time to obtain it. No need. The man turned his head in disdain. He doesn't affect the overall situation. You have prepared a lot of superheroes and collected a lot of intelligence. But what's the use of this? He shook his head and flipped through the information in his hand that recorded the complete situation of the Avengers. With a wave of his hand, the falling information burned in the air and turned into ashes. There is no way to grasp the key. This is the main reason for your failure. Crossbones' expression suddenly changed. A strange look appeared in his eyes as he said to himself, arrogant. The last person who looked down on Dr. Annihilation like this, his ashes have already melted in the volcano in Yellowstone Park. Trust is the key. The biggest weakness of humans is not emotion, but suspicion and suspicion. Most ordinary humans do not trust the vigilantes who protect them. The man said contemptuously, they are jealous of their protectors. The attacks you caused, panic and crime would only strengthen the trust between the two sides. I like your lurking attitude, but I have my doubts about your abilities. During the establishment of the so-called Avengers, there was internal strife, and the outside world did not trust them, but you did nothing? I let them stabilize. This subordinate knows his mistake. Crossbones lowered his head and carefully hid his thoughts. That's why you have to change your direction. Soon, superheroes will cause a terrifying disaster. Enough people will die. When the time comes, activate your powers. I want the Avengers to stink to the end. Do you know what to do? The man asked as he looked at the crossbones. We will influence the government and public opinion, legally control those superheroes, and cause them to split up internally. Stand with most of the untouchables and hide you among the ordinary people. They are stupid and impulsive. Most people don't think with their own brains. They'll believe whatever you say. Therefore, there is no need for combatants. Send those who are unarmed, stand in the shoes of ordinary people, and stir up their emotions. Insult them, attack them, use lies and public opinion to smear them, and find out their true identities. Attack their spirits from their reputation, beliefs, relatives, and lovers, and then destroy their lives. Let me think, what do humans call their actions? The man thought for a moment. Cold violence? Yes, that's the word. And the person inside that rock in the sky. The man used the scepter in his hand to point at the 5 Fingers Mountain in the sky. He pondered and said, "Many people are afraid of it. Even its companions don't believe it. And it is also a threat to us. Just instigate the government to exile it. Load the engine onto an asteroid and exile into the endless darkness of the universe." Crossbones felt a chill down his spine. Listening to these extremely vicious tricks made even a veteran criminal like him feel a subtle sense of discomfort. The Avengers have 2 core members, Iron Man and Captain America. The man tapped the scepter in his hand. Their relationship determines the unity of the Avengers. It may seem unbreakable, but there's a dead knot. The man smiled mysteriously and gently stroked his scepter. Send the Winter Soldiers to attack Captain America, and then tell Stark that his parents died in the hands of the Winter Soldiers. The eyes of the leaper behind Crossbones flickered, but Crossbones said in a trembling voice, "Yes." As if unable to bear to see this vicious gloom, the sun shone through the clouds and shone on the man's face. It was the evil god Loki that Stark and Little Chili Pepper had seen in the video. Crossbones was about to turn and leave when Loki's voice suddenly came from behind. "You must remember our agreement. Next time, bring me the Tesseract." Crossbones replied fearfully, "I will, my lord." He quickened his pace and left the place. Loki stood silently in the same place, and his face was cloudy and uncertain. "Will you blame me, Mother? But I have no other choice. I can only become the supreme of the 9 realms if I give the 6 gems and the earth. Oh, then it will be the 8 realms. No one can stop me, not Odin, not Thor. The evil god Loki, the adopted son of Odin, the king of Asgard, a hybrid of the frost giants. Because of his ambition, he was involved in the war between 2 powerful beings in the universe, Thanos and the Apocalypse, which led to a war that stretched across the entire multiverse, involving the gods of the 5 universes, 4 Apocalypse Knights, and the most mysterious Apocalypse, a multidimensional republic from another universe, a split star soul, a mysterious quantum creature, 2 American governments, countless powerful beings, and a time traveler. The 6 infinity gems and the destruction of the earth. Loki muttered to himself. His eyes shone with wild ambition, and a terrible thought quietly grew in his mind. Why did he have to beg others? If he could find the secret of the 6 gems, he would be as powerful as Thanos and rule the entire universe. If he could find the secret of the earth that even Thanos was afraid of, would he be able to replace it? He lowered his head slightly to hide the greed burning in his eyes. Loki's shadow became fainter and fainter under the sun. Finally, it turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. He did not notice that some inconspicuous metal objects behind him, such as a fire hydrant, were also emitting a metallic gelatinous gas. Chenong sat on a silver chair and watched him disappear. Chapter 207. What do you think of this scene? Chenong played with the soul gem in his hand and said to the shadow blocked by the building behind him. A man slowly walked out of the shadow. He had a typical black appearance with a black eye patch on his left eye. It was Nick. What happened here today? Any leak would cause turmoil in the world security situation. Who would have thought that the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. would walk with the biggest enemy at present? S.H.I.E.L.D. has a mole. I have a vague feeling about this, but the deterioration of the situation is far beyond my expectations. Hydra is really like a poisonous snake, crippled but not dead but not stiff. If a head is lost, there will be another head to replace it. At this point, I can't hide it from you. The situation has gone beyond my control to a considerable extent. Chenong listened to Nick's words and didn't take a word to heart. It was not beyond his judgment that Nick would cooperate with him, but he also knew that there was no trust between S.H.I.E.L.D. and him. S.H.I.E.L.D. would seize every opportunity to try to kill him, and Chenong didn't think S.H.I.E.L.D. had the right to talk to him. Chun-Ong could destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. at any time, even the United States and the Earth. This was the basis of their cooperation and the reason why there was no trust between them at all. All of this was based on Chun-Ang's unilateral, overwhelming advantage. It could be said that Nick cooperated with him with a mentality of self-abandonment. Probably because Skynet could destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. at any time anyway, so he might as well put down his hostility and look for other opportunities. Chun-Ang's gaze peeled off the shell of the soul gem layer by layer. Under the blue shell, the mysterious gem exuded strands of energy, making people feel a cool feeling from a gem. While analyzing the energy sample, he asked Nick, "If you still want to control the situation, then the Avengers are probably your only hope. If they know that S.H.I.E.L.D. has turned to Skynet, in their eyes, they would definitely not be controlled by you. When you came to find me, you didn't have the slightest bit of worry or hesitation. We are the decision makers. As for the thoughts of the Avengers," Nick shrugged indifferently. "Who cares? S.H.I.E.L.D. is an organization born to protect human interests. We don't care about cooperating with demons, as long as there are benefits between the two sides. But with me, you won't get anything out of it. Maintaining peace with you is our greatest benefit," Nick said decisively. "Do you know anything about Asgard?" Chun-Ong suddenly turned around and asked, "You're talking about people from the realm of the gods?" "Yes, we have information about them," Nick answered honestly, as if he had nothing to hide from Chun-Ong. "They have disappeared for too long, but as long as they have appeared in human history, we can find their traces. Odin, Thor, Loki, and the twilight of the gods' prophecy. Norse mythology is widespread. It's impossible for us to be ignorant." Chun-Ong smiled and gestured. "For example, the cosmic Rubik's Cube, the artifact left on Earth by the people of the realm of gods. In order to find it, the Nazis and Red Skull worked hard. It's impossible for S.H.I.E.L.D. to not know anything. We have been entangled with Hydra for so long, but their heads were cut off by you." Nick sighed. Red Skull was a troublesome person, but his death was like smoke. Insignificant. Gold isn't important, Red Skull. Zola, Baron, they're all big people who give us a headache. Nick shook his head and sighed. "I will help you deal with Hydra. I think Alexander Pierce will give me face. You can also borrow the power of Skynet. It will cooperate with you to the greatest extent within its authority. On the eve of this storm, I hope these can give you some sense of security." Alexander Pierce? I didn't expect the former director to be from Hydra. Nick looked a little gloomy. "I still remember him. He's a very good person." Suddenly, Nick's cell phone rang. He apologized to Chun-Ong and walked to the side to pick up the phone. Chun-Ong, on the other hand, looked south in the direction of New Mexico. A soundless wave swept past. Some radiation. There was an obvious change in the physical data. This not only made Dr. Jian and her research team, who were thousands of miles away, overjoyed, but also made Chun-Ong feel the rainbow bridge that spanned from Asgard. Lightning, spatial fluctuations, and Thor falling from the sky. Chun-Ong looked there, and the star map of the realm of gods appeared beside him. Heimdall swept past Chun-Ong, but he didn't notice it. Even the mysterious eyes that could see the souls of the creatures of the 9 territories couldn't find Chun-Ang's shadow. He couldn't even see a mortal like Nick beside Chun-Ong. Interesting eyes. Chun-Ang's eyes stayed on Heimdall's orange eyes for a moment. Then he shifted his gaze from Asgard to the 9 territories, the solar system, all the way to the end of the Milky Way. Heimdall felt the tremor of the power in his eyes, and under the influence of the soul power, he was even blinded for a moment. The terrible power that was like an abyss made him give up resistance from the depths of his heart, and he stood there blankly until the feeling disappeared without warning as it appeared. The brief moment made him think it was an illusion. Chun-Ong retracted his gaze. Just for a short moment, his eyes had swept across the entire Milky Way, and he had a detailed impression of the current situation. Thor was not punished by Odin by sealing his divine power because of his arrogance and arrogance. On the contrary, the ruler of the realm of gods had already felt the coming storm. He sent his son to the center of the storm to control the situation. So Thor didn't lose his divine power, and was still the irascible and conceited prince. And his younger brother, Loki, naturally couldn't just send a destroyer to get rid of this competitor for the throne. He turned to Thanos and came to Earth in person before this. He was ready to complete the task given to him by Thanos and kill Thor at the same time. Loki controls most of Hydra's power, and now uses the power of the psychic scepter to infiltrate between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the U.S. government unscrupulously. With the help of Hydra, Loki controls other forces and develops his own powers smoothly. The S.H.I.E.L.D. controlled by Hydra has arrived in New Mexico and can clash with Thor at any time, involving the entire S.H.I.L.D. in action against Thor, and Tony is extremely hostile to Thor because of his erroneous inference. If things develop as Loki wants, S.H.I.E.L.D. will have a fierce conflict with Asgard, and the internal contradictions of the Avengers will intensify to the point of no return. Under the control of Loki, the master of conspiracy, the two conflicts will, of course, alternate at the most appropriate pace. Thor will receive the most powerful blow from S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Avengers will definitely be weakened to the most dangerous state because of the Civil War before Asgard's revenge arrives. Chapter 208. The changes on Earth are really great. Thor looked around with a strange look on his face. The three warriors of the divine realm were accompanying him. They took Jane's car and set off in the New Mexico desert to a nearby town. The last time Thor came to Earth, it had been a long time for him. Looking at the pedestrians on the streets around him, this alien visitor was a little curious and excited. Jane followed behind them with a confused look, not knowing what she had picked up. "You said your name is Thor? Thor?" Jane asked curiously. "What does it have to do with the mythical Thor?" "Huh," Thor replied proudly. "That's me." He looked a bit like him. Jane looked at Thor next to her. At least his face matched. If she hadn't seen the four of them descending from the sky in a dazzling beam of light, Jane wouldn't have believed a word of what they said. There was no shortage of freaks in this world who liked to go out in armor. It was fashionable for teenagers to wear tight clothes and masks on the street. "Then, Mr. Thor, why did you come to Earth?" Jane followed his words and asked. She didn't know if she should believe them because it all sounded so unbelievable. Speaking of this topic, Thor's face became very serious, and he showed a serious look that made Jane suffocate. "Can you tell me how to find the ruler of your country? I have something to talk to him about." "Country." Daisy stuck her head out from behind and said, "There are still people who use this word to describe the United States. If you want to find our commander, you need to go to a white palace." "White? He has good taste." Thor nodded with a sincere expression. Daisy put her face close to him and observed carefully. "Seriously, I don't see anything wrong with his expression." She turned to Jane and said, "As a psychopath, he's the most handsome I've ever seen. Look at his abs. I can lick." "Daisy!" Jane screamed and pressed her back to her seat. Can you take me to him?" Thor gestured at Jane. "It seems that you are one of the smarter people in your country. The world is facing the invasion of darkness. You are in danger. If I don't see him, many people will die." "Yeah, but we're used to it," Daisy rushed to say, 3 times a year, and each time is different. Our country faces countless crises every year, including alien invasions. As small as a certain doctor inventing something that could endanger the survival of the race. There was also a nuclear crisis. It was a natural disaster. A certain artificial intelligence life was rebelling. She counted with her fingers and said, "Someone blew up the volcano in Yellowstone Park. Somebody has taken over New York. Someone is smashing the Earth with an asteroid from outer space. If it's just a small matter like this, there's no need to bother the great commander." Thor apparently believed Daisy's words. He asked incredulously, "Midgard is so dangerous? Then why are you still living so freely? It looks like there are no warriors in this country." Jane rushed forward and covered Daisy's mouth. Don't believe what she said. Jane suppressed Daisy's resistance in a flustered manner, preventing Daisy from screaming. "I'm telling him the truth. But I know she didn't lie to me." Thor looked into Jane's eyes seriously. "She's habitually exaggerating." Jane wanted to deny it, but thinking about it carefully, what Daisy said turned out to be true, so she could only reluctantly respond. But she's not lying. Someone is indeed threatening the security of your world. Thor interrupted. Jane didn't expect the man in front of her to act more and more real. He looked more involved than a drama actor. Father Odin, Asgard, Loki. These words made her feel out of character and ashamed. One by one, the man's words popped out of his mouth. You mean, there's a dark force in the universe called the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse or something, and they're eyeing the 9 planets of the solar system? They fought with you Martians many times, and you've resisted them outside the solar system. Now, 3,000 years later, they're back. Your father, Odin, sent you to unite Earth and fight them together? Daisy was fascinated. She accurately summarized Thor's words. She commented precisely, "It sounds like a space opera." Then the two of them had an in-depth conversation about the history of Earth recorded in the Old Testament, the history of Asgard and Midgard fighting against the Four Horsemen, and the history of Earth being covered up recorded in the Book of Prophecy. Wait, it's not the Four Horsemen who are threatening us. That's after Armageddon. Jane had to interrupt their conversation. There's no dark force in the universe. No Four Horsemen. No Archangel. No Jesus. It's just a mad scientist who created a robot that betrayed humanity. It's all really subversive, and I think it's like science fiction. But that's the case, okay? Dr. Doom created Skynet, and then he attacked New York in a frenzy, creating this series of disasters. Jane was a little excited. It's all a tragedy. It's not material for our entertainment and fantasy. Jane's mood was very low. She was almost begging Daisy to say this, but Daisy didn't seem to hear it. She was lost in her memories, and her face was dull. Wait. Daisy suddenly interrupted Jane's mood. What's the full name of Skynet? Daisy hurriedly took out her cell phone and said to Jane, "Hurry up, help me find out what the full name of Skynet is. I remember hearing it somewhere. It seems to be the first news." Heavily armed robots appeared on the streets of New York and exchanged fire with the army. These robots are very powerful, and the army suffered heavy losses. A military spokesman said these robots were controlled by an artificial intelligence called War Skynet. War Skynet. Thor repeated the name Daisy had read out. He turned his hand and held Mjolnir's hammer. Electromagnetic force spread out from the special hammerhead and formed a wonderful connection with the Earth's magnetic field. The electromagnetic force between the two allowed Thor to freely control Mjolnir's hammer and the Earth's gravity. Can you tell me which direction New York is? Thor held the rope of Mjolnir's hammer and asked Jane to stop the car on the side of the road. Chapter 209. When Chun-Ang's gaze swept across the Milky Way from Earth, Swallow Star, who was far away in the Milky Way's first spiral arm, raised his head, and their eyes met in the endless void. This spiritual connection that transcended time and space, spanning billions of galaxies, allowed the two to complete the necessary communication in an instant. Outsider, Swallow Star's voice was long and slow, but his fear of Chun-Ong could be heard. I remember this feeling. What's your relationship with the apocalypse? The feeling you give me is exactly the same as him. That's a memory from a long time ago. Chun-Ang's emotions were strangely calm. I really want to play with you. Swallow Star's body moved a little, but it caused a universal disaster around him. The huge gravitational tide tore apart the planet next to him. But you're too far away from me. I need a lot of energy to go to you. There are fewer and fewer planets in this universe that can provide me with energy. My emissaries will find you, and they will bring my will. Chun-Ong sighed. Then you have to hurry. There are more and more people who want to trouble me. If I wait any longer, I may not have the time. Outside New York City, the once bustling New York harbor was now like a deserted beach. Because it was too close to the Skynet base, most New Yorkers chose to leave, preferring to take a detour. Chun-Ong stood on the remnants of the Statue of Liberty. This representative building of the old era of the United States had now become the evil symbol of Skynet. The declaration that was originally held in his left hand was now only half a broken arm. And on his right hand that was holding the torch, the symbol of Skynet was impressively eye-catching. This was the symbol of the new New York, the broken arm of the Statue of Liberty. Nick called on the Skynet system and locked onto a figure quickly approaching in the atmosphere. His body was violently rubbing against the air, and his whole body was burning like a torch. Is he flying by throwing his hammer? Nick clicked his tongue in wonder. What's the difference between this and lifting yourself up by your hair? It's unbelievable. Don't use Earth's common sense to speculate about the universe. Chenong didn't finish his sentence because while he was speaking, Thor had already crossed dozens of kilometers, more than half of North America, and arrived in front of him. Mjolnir fell from the sky like a meteor, bringing with it a gravitational potential energy of hundreds of thousands of tons. The Statue of Liberty and the surrounding several kilometers of land were smashed into pieces. It was as if someone had slammed the surface of the water. The rock layer of the Earth's crust rose high like a wave and shattered into countless fragments in midair. Then it will fall to the ground. Just a small portion of the Mjolnir's power, which had the mass of a star, was enough to destroy New York City. Fortunately, when Chenong disappeared from space, he smoothed out the fluctuating Higgs boson field in the void, so that the mass fluctuations were limited to the narrow range of the Skynet base. Thor stood in the middle of a large, glass-like pit. The disaster-ridden Statue of Liberty finally evaporated into particles this time, and Chenong, who was originally standing on it, emerged from space with Nick and stood in front of him again. Nick smiled bitterly and patted the dust off his body, quite dissatisfied with this emissary of alien friendship. Asgardian. Chenong was the first to speak. Did Odin send you here to provoke me? Is Asgard impatient with peace and wants to experience the hot-blooded battle on the edge of life and death? Or do you think you have the strength to challenge me? Along with this sentence, only Thor's arrogant eyes could be seen. Mortal, Thor roared. Who gave you the courage to provoke Asgard? I don't know where you dug up war and tried to control something you can't control, but you have provoked the taboo of the 9 realms, and your actions will get you killed. Nick heard Thor's impulsive words. He swallowed what he wanted to say and silently walked to the side, watching the conflict that was bound to intensify. First, Chenong stretched out a finger. Asgardian monkey, you don't know what a mortal is. Second, Chenong continued to stretch out a finger. Your understanding of me is also quite wrong. Your pride means nothing to me, and your beliefs are so ridiculous to me. Monkey, do you know your origins? Before you call yourselves gods, you'd better take off the collar I've hung around your necks. I'm not in the mood to give you a history lesson on Asgard, because that would waste too much of my time. So, just as Chenong finished his sentence, a voice suddenly rang out. Thor felt a sharp pain on his neck, and the feeling of suffocation continued to come. He could only struggle in Chenong's hands. He watched as Chenong lifted him up with one hand. Mjolnir was at Chenong's feet, and Thor tried to control it to fly over, but Chenong stepped on it. Mjolnir was forged from the nucleus of a dying star. It was conservatively estimated to weigh 3,000 Earths. The existence of this material alone was enough to tear the Earth apart. Usually, it was controlled by Thor, and he could freely control its mass. But now, this hammer, which was several times denser than neutron star matter, was firmly rooted in the ground, and it couldn't even get rid of one of Chenong's feet. Thor had let go of the power that bound Mjolnir. He tried his best to summon his artifact and release its unparalleled power, but the hammer remained motionless. Not even the concrete below it was crushed. Why? Thor's face was already red, and his eyes were bloodshot. He barely spat out a breath from his lungs and asked unwillingly, Are you asking why you can't fight back against me? Or why Mjolnir doesn't respond to your call? Chenong said lightly. Thor's face was ashen. As an Asgardian, he shouldn't have suffocated, but Thor felt that his life was slipping away from him bit by bit. He looked at Chenong with eyes full of unwillingness and doubt. Why? He asked silently. Because I am your creator. Asgardians trying to use the power I gave you to fight against me. You are stupid. What of your gods? What about me? Who gave you power? If your nobility comes from your natural bloodline, then what about me? Who created you? Chenong looked calmly at the gradually despairing Thor. It seems that Odin didn't tell you. I gave you wisdom. I rewrote your genes. I wrote your destiny I recreated your race. I am your beginning and end, your master and nightmare. What do you have to fight against me, stupid Asgardian monkey? Nick's hands trembled slightly. Not only did Thor struggle with the last of his strength, but Nick also recalled the line of extremely insulting words he saw on the jeans. Skynet property. Abduction must be investigated. It seems that it's not just Earth, but even aliens have these things. Nick once again confirmed the results of the last autopsy analysis and recalled the legends of the mutants. Will we have to fight against them? Such thoughts kept flashing in Nick's mind, and a huge despair enveloped him, even more than Thor, who was struggling in Chenang's hands. Soon, this question was answered by Chanang himself. The so-called innate nobility is all given to you by me. The sense of superiority you are proud of is just a control group in an experiment. The things that give you divinity are my collars to enslave you. 5,000 years of life, superhuman wisdom, natural divine power, strong physique. Ha! Chun-Ong smiled and said, this is precisely the most despicable proof. Only wisdom. This is the supreme wealth that I have given you. And only wisdom. You are equal in front of me. Everything that comes from the power of wisdom is real, and everything that comes from the status and honor of wisdom is meaningful. The sense of superiority that your bloodline gives you is only a shame in front of me. Asgardians, prove it to me with your wisdom. Chanang threw Thor on the ground. Mjolnir is a very good creation. I can see that it was born in a very ancient era. The wisdom of your ancestors is amazing to cast a star into such a suitable substance. But the mass of all matter comes from the self-interaction of the Higgs field, which is commonly known as the God particle. Once I isolate the interaction between Mjolnir and the God particle, it will be a piece of dark matter to the mass field, unable to be affected by the mass of other matter and unable to show mass. Even though it weighs as much as 3,000 Earths, it is just a decoration. Chapter 210. With a gentle lift, Chun-Ong had already picked up the Mjolnir, which was said to be only recognized, in his hand. Mjolnir was forged from the center of a planet that was about to decline, and the material density had reached the extreme. Even the Asgardians themselves had to limit the power of this artifact. Otherwise, this hammer would have collapsed and distorted into a point, and then within 20 nanoseconds, it would form a small black hole 3 times the size of the solar system. Therefore, most of the power of this weapon was used to maintain its own existence. Its gravity must be balanced with the internal force that supports the atomic structure, otherwise it would cause catastrophic consequences. In the hands of Mjolnir, this hammer was only a weapon that could change its weight, but in the hands of Chun-Ong, it was a half-formed black hole. Thor struggled to get up from the ground, and when he saw Chun-Ong carrying his hammer, he roared and was about to pounce on him. But the fluctuations of the Bifrost in midair stopped him. In a white pillar of light, Odin's figure loomed, and the violent spatial fluctuations isolated Thor from rushing towards Chun-Ong. Enough. Thor, don't let me down again. Odin walked out of the pillar of light with an angry look on his face. Holding the golden scepter in his hand, he stopped Thor and turned to Chun-Ong and said, Dear Creator, the Asgardians pray for peace. This matter was a misunderstanding caused by Thor's impulsiveness. We are not hostile to you. I don't care if you are malicious or not. Chun-Ong said to Odin with the hammer in his hand, You should know the rules I set. If Asgard is eliminated in this competition, I will not show any mercy. Among the many civilizations I have created, you are not the best, and you have not shown any special advantages. The civilizations that have left the 9 realms will eventually return, and you will have an endless battle with them. The competition between civilizations is always the fiercest, and the loser will not have a second chance. The Asgardians are never afraid to fight. Odin answered Chun-Ang's words with a proverb circulating in the divine realm. And, aren't you the most hostile to them? It was you who made them flee their homeland, and it was also you, so that their souls had nowhere to rest. They hate you to the core, and think about revenge day and night. Odin raised his head and said in a rather imposing manner, Now that they have returned, they are preparing to take advantage of the fact that the 4 horsemen have yet to awaken. I will send you to hell. Of course, it was impossible for Chunong to be unprepared, but he believed that there was no need to prepare. Even though this was only a part of his will in this world, his knowledge, control, and wisdom would not be weakened by the absence of his true body. The pale blue psionic energy on Magneto faded little by little, revealing the human skin underneath. The psionic metal armor slowly peeled off from his body. Beside him, Scarlet, which carefully controlled her ability. The dark red magic dissipated in the air, and the unstable energy in Magneto's body quickly calmed down. In the gene chain in his body, those genes that did not belong to humans began to degenerate and fundamentally break up and recombine. In Magneto's violent trembling, all the changes were perfect, and the genetic mutation selected the 1 in a billion probability and began to steadily degenerate. What is probability? In terms of dimensions, it was the 4-dimensional timeline that was decided at the 5-dimensional level. In terms of time, it was the possibility of what was going to happen in the next second. The future was filled with endless possibilities and probabilities. Every different probability represented a brand new timeline. Looking at the future from the present, it was all made up of probability clouds. A coin was thrown into the sky, and according to the various possibilities it fell, there would be different futures. When the future became the present, the probability cloud collapsed into a timeline. And Scarlet Witch's power was chaos magic. It was the power of controlling probability. She could choose the outcome of the collapse of the probability cloud and let the world find the reason itself. It was a powerful ability that directly determined the future. The ability to control cause and effect was chaos magic. Chaos represented infinite possibilities. Magic represented the power to realize this possibility. Just like now, Walter hoped that Magneto's transformation would reach the most perfect state, so no matter how small the probability, it would happen to Magneto. Of course, Walter's chaos magic had its flaws, even though it was omnipotent. Although this ability was omnipotent, the lower the probability, the more power it took to realize it. This ability first needed to see all kinds of possibilities in the future, then lock onto the outcome that Walter needed, and the timeline would naturally be established. It could be said that Walter determined the outcome of things, and the reason would naturally be filled. This would become an inevitability in the law of cause and effect. If Walter could see the endless future, then she would be the one to decide the fate of the entire universe. This universe would be 1 dimension lower than her. If Walter could control the entire past, then she could lock onto the probability of what happened in the past, turning the already determined inevitability into an unknown probability again, returning the entire universe to the past, choosing a new timeline, and changing the current world. Every time I see you, I feel like I'm old. Magneto sighed. Walter sat on his father's knees. Although he was very young, his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. After so many years, I've come to terms with many things. My disagreement with Professor X, my hatred for humans. There's only one thing I can't let go of. Magneto clenched his fist and said emotionally, "That's the future of our race. We're mutants, not celestials." He stood up from a chair and looked out the window. The spaceship was traveling at high speed, but he could already see the 9 planets that had been orbiting since ancient times, shining under the sun. The familiar magnetic fluctuations made Magneto's hands tremble slightly. Under the electromagnetic waves that were comparable to a space telescope, the blue planet was suddenly visible. On Earth, Chunong had already felt that familiar mental fluctuation, that unyielding will to fight. "Lend me your hammer." Chunong greeted Odin. Holding Mjolnir upside down, he gently knocked on the void in front of him. A black hole silently melted out of the space, devouring all the electromagnetic waves that radiated from it. Chunong used Mjolnir's powerful mass to distort space to form a black hole, pulling the space to a relative extreme of curvature. It was like opening a wormhole in space, and he could instantly reach the range of Mjolnir's mass. This was the Einstein-Rosen Bridge, which was also known as the Rainbow Bridge by the Asgardians. However, The miracle that the Asgardians needed to use large machinery to accomplish, Chenong only needed to use Mjolnir's half-finished black hole to do it. Even more extreme, Chenong could do it with his own power. Chapter 211. Jordaheim was a dead planet. It was covered with dark blue glaciers. Strong winds passed through the ice, and oddly shaped icicles whistled in the wind. As far as the eye could see, it was a monotonous blue. It was like a lifeless land of death. Neptune was 30 times farther from the sun than Earth, and its solar radiation intensity was only 1% of Earth's. Therefore, the temperature here was below minus 200 degrees Celsius all year round. It was a forbidden zone for life, and the barrenness of species was comparable to the extreme environment of Earth. Only magical species like the frost giants could survive here. But today, Jordaheim welcomed a group of uninvited guests. Magneto walked on the ice and snow on his way to the frost giants' settlement area. Although he only had a human body, Magneto's body was covered with an electromagnetic layer 30 feet in diameter, enough to allow him to move freely in this environment. He could already apply his ability to the atomic level, and the title of Magneto was more of a nostalgia for him. Matter was infinitely subdivided under his control. Even the fragile human body could receive the oxygen, radiation, and gravity adjustments from the electromagnetic layer. It could be said that Magneto was carrying the best spacesuit with him. Wanda, are we almost there? Magneto took a deep breath and asked. The frost giant King Laufey is just ahead. Because of Loki, the frozen magic box has returned to his hands. Wanda was exposed to the extreme frost, moving freely as if the cold ignored her flesh and blood. Magneto looked in the direction of Earth and confirmed with Wanda again. Are you sure he will come here? Wanda, you have to help me choose the only possibility. As long as we have the possibility of defeating him, we will win. At this time, every choice is crucial to us, because the future lies in the slightest bit of it. My ability ensures that every choice we make is the most correct. Only here can we contain him to the greatest extent and create a favorable situation for us. Among the countless possibilities on Earth, there's a 91.2% chance that we will all die, and in the remaining 7%, the final outcome is also failure. In Wanda's perception, the world seemed to be divided into countless parts. Her senses wandered in the river of time, and the shadows of the world overlapped into countless layers of light and shadow in her eyes. Walter could see herself and the elite team of mutants. The group of people who descended on Earth soon encountered Chenong, and then a fierce conflict ensued. She could see that most of these shadows had met the members of the Avengers, and they were cooperating with each other. They also clashed fiercely because of their different ideologies. As time continued to move forward, the illusions began to shatter one after another. The mutants joined forces with the Avengers to fight against the apocalypse. The moon in the sky opened up a Skynet base. The mutants sleeping on the dark side of the moon woke up and turned the Earth into a giant insect nest. In order to save Earth from the hands of the apocalypse, the Avengers were forced to fight to the death with the mutated squad. In the end, the team's illusions were destroyed in a cruel battle. The mutants fought against the apocalypse alone. Magneto was killed by the apocalypse at the first moment. The plague, lurking in the sea of consciousness of all creatures on Earth, infected through the mind. It caused the mutants to die one by one. The illusions were destroyed. This time, Walter was prepared to perish together with the apocalypse. The moment he arrived on Earth, he only had time to see Chenong before the illusions were destroyed. Once again, Magneto was prepared to detonate the sun and destroy Earth. 12 light years away from the solar system, the Milky Way suddenly flashed violently. The billions of stars reconstructed by Skynet extended their turrets and exploded simultaneously. The illusions were destroyed. The professor's mind joined forces with Magneto from countless light years away. The two of them created a huge mental storm, trying to change the personality and mind of all intelligent life in the solar system. In the end, it led to death. The illusions were destroyed. The last time, Walter thought of all ways to maximize the advantage of the situation. The Avengers were their allies. The true bodies of the 5 universe gods descended, and the entire astral race returned. In the end, the 4 horsemen all woke up. In the end, Walter only saw the apocalypse revive in the endless light, and a vast war descended. The illusions were still destroyed. Countless possibilities, countless paths for the future. Walter desperately searched for a turning point on the probability cloud, but the result was death after death. Again and again, the illusions were destroyed. Again and again, he saw his father and best friend die. In the end, Walter realized that as long as they left Earth, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse would not appear. After the best choice, they came to Neptune, Jordaheim. The apocalypse is very well prepared on Earth. There, he can get the support of the 4 horsemen at any time. At this point, Walter paused and replied, "And he's already here." Hearing this, Magneto closed his eyes. "The apocalypse, where are you?" While thinking, the electromagnetic field controlled by Magneto has spread to the entire planet between atoms, and the electromagnetic force in the atomic nucleus continues to spread in all directions in his perception. The only elemental substance that makes up matter, the endless atoms, provides endless energy and carriers for this electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field swept across the surface of the planet, then spread to the atmosphere, and by relying on the material structure of the yard, it spread to the core of the planet. All the matter that made up the planet, including the body components that made up the frost giants, were included in this electromagnetic field. In just an instant, Magneto completed the search and monitoring of the different radiation and electromagnetic waves of the entire planet, using all known means to scan the electromagnetic properties of matter. No, Magneto opened his eyes and couldn't find Chenong at all, although Walter had already hinted to him. If Chenong didn't want to, he would be like dark matter. No one could find him. "Come out," Magneto suddenly shouted to the side. A huge shadow flashed across the glacier, and a dark blue-skinned giant walked out from the depths of the glacier, looking down at Magneto and the others. Behind him, there were countless similar shadows, appearing and disappearing nearby. "Isn't this where you should be? Who are you people?" The tallest man among the frost giants stood on the glacier opposite Magneto. "Frost giants." Magneto looked at them coldly. "Before the apocalypse comes, all of you get out of here." There was no warmth in Magneto's words. Before this, he had already confirmed with Walter that no one would be able to help them. On the contrary, these people would only have a negative impact on them. He needed the Frost Giants' ice magic box, but he didn't need them themselves. In a battle at this level, the more variables there were, the more disadvantageous it would be for Walter to use his abilities. Because Chenong certainly didn't care about the combat power of the Frost Giants, but they would interfere with his side a lot. "Are you looking to die?" Following Lauren's shout, countless Frost Giants appeared from all directions. Just when the Frost Giant was ready to move because of Magneto's provocation, Scarlet Witch and Iceman shook hands together, and the probability-changing power of chaos magic and Iceman's ability influenced each other and merged, and a faint cold light rose between the two. On the timeline, the energy invaded the future, giving Laufey a sudden feeling of impending disaster. "Our ability combination has not been tested yet, so we urgently need someone to prove it on the spot," Walter said to Laufey. "You can only blame your bad luck," Iceman said. Iceman can turn everything into frost, but he can't use his ability very successfully. But Walter can help him, among the countless possibilities, to lock on to the one he needs. The frost spread, turning everything into ice and snow. The giants named after the frost turned into countless ice sculptures, still maintaining their appearance when they were alive, but they had long since lost the breath of life. Laufey stood on the glacier, her whole body frozen in place. "Find the ice magic box," Magneto said. Iceman controlled the glacier to send down the dark blue magic box that Laufey had carefully kept and handed it to Walter. Magneto walked straight through the lifelike ice sculptures. Behind him, Dakin, Gray Vulcan, Mr. M, Storm, Quicksilver, Shadowcat, Blink, Iceman, Aurora, Sanctuary, Angel, Golden Pill, and countless mutant elites were preparing for the battle in an orderly manner. Chapter 2:12. Heimdall stood on the bivrost, watching the Nine Realms as usual, but this time he focused most of his attention on Jordan and Heim. His responsibility was to pay attention to the situation in the universe that threatened the safety of Asgard. Although Odin was still in Midgard, Heimdall could still inform him of the situation with the help of Bifrost. Then, after Chin-Ong moved away with Mjolnir, Odin received a message from Bifrost. Heimdall's message came very timely and very short. The frost giants are all dead, and they were frozen in Jotunheim by a group of suspicious humans. Odin certainly knew how difficult their enemy was. In the battle with the frost giants, he even lost an eye. Although Asgard had the upper hand, the tenacity, toughness, ferocity, and strength of the frost giants still made him feel troubled. But this time, this race seemed to have been directly erased from Jotunheim. Odin did not feel happy when he heard the news. On the contrary, his heart was very heavy. Continue to monitor these people. Now send me back to Asgard. The situation was worse than he had imagined. In the ice field of Jotunheim, the cold wind blew over Laufey's body. It could be seen that the frost giant's body had changed qualitatively. Their somatic cells were translucent, and the texture of the ice was very obvious. Through the slightly blue skin, the unique internal organs and bones of the frost giants could be clearly seen. They had turned into ice sculptures. The frost giants' body tissues had an extremely high resistance to cold. They could maintain the flexibility of their body tissues in extremely low temperatures, preventing them from freezing. However, this phenomenon was no longer as simple as freezing. This meant that the composition of their bodies had changed. Odin's heart sank to the bottom of the sea. He knew what this ability to change the underlying material base of the world represented. The Omega Mutant Iceman. His influence on the movement of atoms could be achieved without doing any work, and he completely ignored the laws of matter. He could create infinite ice anytime and anywhere, and at the same time, he could change the nature of matter and turn any matter into ice. This meant that the Iceman had the ability to freeze time and freeze all matter at absolute zero. Create matter. Shake the foundation of the universe to create something out of nothing. Alchemy that completely changes the nature of matter. These three abilities were almost taboo. The Iceman could not use his abilities normally. In fact, his performance was not as good as some alpha-level mutants. He couldn't perfectly display his strength, let alone develop his untapped potential. But under the control of Scarlet Witch's chaos magic, it locked onto the limits of Iceman's ability. Over here, there are as many as 12 mutants with the same or slightly worse potential as Iceman. Some of them were Omega-level mutants, while others had special potential. With the help of the Scarlet Witch, they were able to survive. He used his strongest state to display his strength. And when Chin-Ong faced them, he didn't mean to hide at all. He simply and directly stood opposite Magneto, on a vast expanse of white land. A person walking towards them was very conspicuous. If they were on Neptune, they would be even more conspicuous. Chin-Ang's appearance hasn't changed much. Although he is wearing Dr. Doom's mask, Magneto still recognized him at a glance. It can only be said that the memory that Chin-Ong brings to him is too unforgettable. Chin-Ong did not plan to wear a mask to face his old friend. The silver-white mask on his face shattered into tiny grains of sand and fell down. He also changed back into his previous attire. Chin-Ong looked like a slightly young Oriental man, which even surprised the elites of the new generation of mutants on the opposite side. When Magneto saw him, the expression on his face suddenly froze. He seemed to have returned to that era, to his nightmares day and night, once again witnessing the history of being manipulated, controlled, and crushed. Magneto took a deep breath. Although he was mentally prepared, he suddenly saw the shadow in his heart that had been there for a long time. It still takes some time to reconcile. Although he has imagined the scene of them meeting again thousands of times in his mind, Magneto is still a little overly excited. Of course, it was a memory mixed with anger and fear. Apocalypse, we meet again. Magneto's voice was not calm. We meet again, old friend. Chin-Ong smiled and said, only this time I'm no longer Apocalypse. I am Dr. Destruction, Shield, as Chief Wanted Fugitive, the controller of Skynet. I know. Magneto nodded and said, I have seen the other Apocalypse, but I will still call you Apocalypse. Just think of it as the stubbornness of the old. The world has changed too fast. Familiar names remind me of the past. Magneto adjusted his posture, and the little movements with the habit of celestial disappeared. Standing in front of Chun-Ong was an old man from the 20th century. Professor X disagreed with me. He tried to stop me from coming to see you, but I knew that we would meet eventually. Time can't stop us, space can't stop us, and other things are the same. There are some things we need to end, so there is no point in hiding. And I don't want to escape. You are right. Chun-Ong agreed. If you wait any longer, you will have no way to escape. Even in this universe, we have never gotten rid of your control and influence, so we are destined to face you again, because the Four Horsemen and the other Apocalypse will not exist without meaning. Their meaning can only be reflected on us. Besides, for freedom and survival, we have no choice. Magneto's slightly bent waist suddenly straightened, and he stood in front of Chun-Ong and said, So I told him, our world is just a huge cage. We have never been free, and from the moment we left our homes, the free air we breathe was an illusion. The truth is, we live in a lie. A complete scam and lie created by you. Magneto's gray hair was trembling a little. He looked at Chun-Ong, and under his calm expression, he suppressed huge emotional fluctuations. Wanda stepped forward anxiously and stood in front of him. Magneto pulled her away. He was waiting for Chun-Ang's answer. Do you believe in fate? Chun-Ong asked an unrelated question. No. Why not? Magneto's body tightened in an instant, and he looked up at Chun-Ong and said word by word. The so-called fate refers to involuntary actions, and I don't like this concept. Chun-Ong smiled, and he recited in a movie dialogue, I know what you mean. Let me tell you why you are here. You are here because you have realized something. Something you can't explain, but you can feel it. This feeling has been with you your whole life. There must be something wrong with this world, and although you can't say it, it must exist. This feeling is like a thorn in your heart, making you restless. It is this feeling that brought you to me. Do you know what I am saying? Magneto's tears gushed out at once, and turbid tears slid down his cheeks, and his hands trembled uncontrollably, making him look less like a powerful warrior and more like an old man in his twilight years. He suppressed his anger and gritted his teeth with the last of his sanity and asked, Dimensional reduction matrix? Do you want to know what it is? Chun-Ong didn't seem to feel guilty, and he replied calmly, Do you think the Prophet bought you enough time? Or, if you escape from this universe, the dimensional reduction will no longer exist? Skynet is the carrier of dimensional reduction, and the main program is completed by the Four Horsemen. Since the Four Horsemen still exist, what makes you think you have escaped? Do you think the Four Horsemen are tools for me to control you? Do you think it is a disaster that destroys civilization at will? In fact, they're just a program of the entire main body. What really controls you is the world that blinds your eyes so that you can't see the truth. Is the world we are in now an illusion or reality? Magneto couldn't help but ask. It's not as bad as you think. If I just transferred your consciousness to a low-latitude universe, why would I have to make it so complicated? You can all create quantum computers and virtual worlds. What's the point of me storing your civilization on my hard drive? Chun-Ong comforted him. I just want to try to reduce the dimensions of a universe, which means that I need to thoroughly understand this universe in order to master the two orders of information that overflows the universe. In fact, it is not easy to reduce the dimensions of an objectively existing world, and I have only completed half of it. The 5 universe gods are a dimension higher than this universe, and with their existence, you still have hope. As long as this single universe and its multiverse are not separated from each other, you still have hope. Magneto's expression didn't improve at all, and he sneered, Why do you have to tell us so much? Because I want you to win. For experiments, sometimes failure is more valuable than success. If the experiment goes to this point and I still fail, then I will gain more than success. Not only do I have the data of dimensional reduction, but I also have the valuable experience of civilization upgrading. Chenong looked at him sincerely and said to him in an extremely sincere tone, I sincerely wish you success in this. He raised his finger and said, Now that I exist in this universe, I am only in the same dimension as you. In essence, I am still inferior to the 5 gods. There are 3 key points in the whole plan. First, the center of the multiverse is Earth. Second, the core of the dimensional reduction program is Apocalypse. Third, I am the adjuster of the dimensional reduction program. Chapter 213. When Chun Ong told Wang the cruel truth about the mutants and the world, the illusion in Wang Da's eyes began to collapse. This meant that the future was going to be greatly changed. Chaos magic could lock onto the one Walter wanted among the infinite possibilities and directly change the future. However, the harsher the conditions were, the more the chaos magic used to distort reality. Just the infinite possibilities of the future was an astronomical number. The energy and time needed to calculate, store, and remember were all consuming her life. So, even Walter could not stay in that state all the time. Even before this life and death battle, Walter did not dare to use her full power. She only kept the chaos magic output at a relatively high frequency. Within 30 seconds, she could see all the possibilities in the future. Within a day, she could see more than 99% of the possibilities. However, the further the timeline, the less information she could obtain. A year later, she could only see 60% of the possibilities. 10 years later, this number would drop to 50%. In other words, Walter would ignore half of the possibilities 10 years later. 30 seconds before Chen Ong told her the secret, Walter saw that there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of this coming true. However, within 30 seconds, this possibility had increased to 60%. But it wasn't until Chen Ong really told Magneto the truth that the future changed dramatically. In the future 1 year later, the heroes of Earth, who originally occupied an important position, were suddenly marginalized. More and more interstellar civilizations appeared in the future pages. The vast interstellar war, the reappearance of mutants in this world, and the 5 great gods of the universe riding on their dependents, turned the galaxy into a charaba. Countless famine mutants started to explode on the dark side of the moon and turned into greedy zergs, turning dozens of galaxies into insect nests. The mysterious Death Knights and the Goddess of Death became an incomprehensible, illogical, chaotic phenomenon of the universe. They pulled the dead civilizations out of the world of the dead and revived them in this universe. Angels with endless bright wings hatched from billions of stars. The sun spread its wings. Infinite multiverses and infinite Sephiroth were born from it. They gathered on Earth to become one and only Seraph. They ruled dozens of galaxies. Angels hatched from infinite stars and planets. They were emissaries born from the plague of the planet. These nightmarish existences greatly impacted Walter's mind. Hunger, pestilence, and death. Just one look at them would cause one to suffer from a strong spiritual corruption. With Walter's pure essence, looking at these existences that were as glorious as the sun caused considerable damage to her spirit. Not to mention that there were 5 universe gods who were on the same level as her. At this point, Walter felt as if his brain was suddenly being bombarded by endless, incomprehensible, and completely chaotic information that was filled with wisdom and truth. She felt the soreness, itchiness, swelling, and extreme pain from the depths of her brain, making her want to smash her head with an axe. Incinerate the brain with fire. But this was not the cruelest part. What was worse was the information about existences that were completely different from humans, the existence of the universe gods, and the nature of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These non-human radiated information almost destroyed her personality. Wanda, Magneto saw a Scarlet Witch's twisted expression like a ghost, and a painful voice that was unbearable to listen to, and hurriedly held his daughter in his arms. "Father, I'm in so much pain." Walter clutched him tightly, enduring the pain from the depths of his soul. "Also to Jin Norona Kavaguda." Walter's body began to twitch in Magneto's arms. She made some strange syllables from the depths of her throat, making people feel a chaotic, evil aura spreading from her. What's going on? How could this be? What's wrong with her? Please tell me what's wrong with her. In his anxiety, Magneto couldn't care about anything else. He directly asked Chun Ong told Magneto, regretfully, she left. Chaos magic is a powerful force, but it is also a dangerous existence. It is impossible for humans to master this power. Only by sublimating themselves like me, or by throwing themselves into chaos and becoming an evil god of chaos like the great old ones, can they master this power. Every time she uses her ability, she gets closer to the evil god, until she completely loses her human characteristics. She becomes another great outer god. Magneto fell into silence. He held his daughter tightly and suddenly looked up and asked, "Is there any way to save her?" Chun-Ong shook his head and said, "This is the inevitable end of her soul. Chaos magic is her essence. We can only delay the process, but we can't change the result. Going crazy is just her initial appearance. Then could she get the power to fight against you?" Magneto had regained his composure. He stood up with Walter in his arms. "Of course." Chun-Ong smiled and said, "The great old ones are a way of existence in a higher dimension. Of course she can get the power to fight against me." "That's good." Magneto's eyes were really sad. He put his hand on Walter's head and said sadly, "I love you, Walter, but you are no longer our compatriot." A powerful electromagnetic wave vibrated out of Magneto's hand and completely destroyed the personality in Walter's brain. "Father, why?" Walter's personality left one last question. Despair, disbelief, and the pain of faith collapsing made it hard for the others present to accept. Dakin grabbed Walter's body from behind and asked Magneto, "What are you doing?" "She is no longer our compatriot." Magneto replied coldly, "Even if she is, she can be sacrificed for the future of the mutants. We need her power to fight against the apocalypse." After Walter's personality dissipated, the side of the great old ones completely took over. There were no human shortcomings, and the ultimate power of chaos magic was used perfectly. The endless chaos information of the future was easily accepted. The powerful chaos magic had truly reached the level of distorting everything and changing the universe with a single thought. Dakin and the newborn Scarlet, which saw the end of the endless possibilities of the future. It was a patch of darkness, and countless bright futures were drawing closer to this patch of darkness. An endless loneliness, endless void, endless darkness. The only thing that existed was the nothingness of nothingness. The timelines that spread out to countless possibilities were gathered together and sunk into this darkness. It was as if the ending of a story had been revealed, and the infinite possibilities of the future collapsed into the only darkness. 80%, 90%. The darkness gradually swallowed all the futures, leaving only a tiny bit of light. That was the infinitesimal unknown, the one that escaped. The one that prevented this world from becoming a book, a few movies, and a fixed collection in Chun-Ang's hands. It was the one ray of hope that kept this world from being dimensionally reduced. It was the variable supported by the 5 universe gods and the protagonists of this universe. The time for this darkness to descend was 10 years later. There was an infinite future in these 10 years. 10 years later, there was only a dark future and a sliver of other possibilities. This world only has a sliver of hope. A bone-chilling coldness rose in the hearts of Dakin and the Scarlet Witch. Even the madness of the great old ones was interrupted. This evil god of endless chaos, if dimensionally reduced, was as good as dead. At this moment, the entire world only had one enemy. In the darkness, everything disappeared. There was only an invisible shadow flipping through a book. The sound of pages flipping was crisp and melodious. Even in the darkness, Coon and the Scarlet Witch could imagine such a scene. A person who looked exactly like Chun-Ong was flipping open a book in the void. The pages quickly slid past his fingertips. Every page was a time and space, and every page was a world. The thick oil paint painted them vividly and exaggeratedly, telling the story of this world. Finally, Chun-Ong closed the title page, revealing the name of the book, Marvel. Kill him. Chapter 214. The first to react was not Magneto. In a femtosecond relative to the low-speed universe, Quicksilver arrived in front of Chun-Ong, carrying enough energy to destroy all matter and even space, and slammed a punch towards Chun-Ong. Quicksilver is really fast. Even at the speed of light in a femtosecond, it can only travel 3 microns, less than 1/100th of a strand of hair. It takes 1 to 1 femtosecond for an atom in a molecule to complete a typical vibration. It usually takes hundreds of femtoseconds to complete a rapid chemical reaction. The interaction between light and the pigment on the retina, the process of producing vision, takes about 2 femtoseconds. This kind of speed could only appear when the space between the two of them was extremely distorted. Even so, Quicksilver's absolute speed was close to 100 nanoseconds per meter, which was close to the speed of light. Any matter that possessed such speed would have terrifying destructive power. Under the conditions of this speed, every time the mass of the matter increases by 1 gram, the energy required will increase geometrically. At Quicksilver's current speed, the high temperature, high pressure, strong energy and force generated by hitting the matter can directly trigger the nuclear reaction of the matter's atoms, and the energy generated by the impact with Chun-Ang's body is enough to blow up the entire Neptune. Anyone who hurts Walter must die. Compared to the low-speed universe, Quicksilver has completely become independent from the timeline. He can think, observe, and kill Chun-Ong with the fastest speed and reaction. Just a little bit more, Quicksilver thought this way. This distance for him was just a thought, and even his body didn't have time to react. But in the eyes of others, almost all of them felt a cold shiver all over their bodies. Just in front of Chun-Ong, Quicksilver was frozen in the void less than a step away, 1 step away, and it became a natural moat. His eyes focused and stared at Chun-Ang's position, even with a confident smile on his face, as if he could cut open Chun-Ang's chest in the next second. No one knows Quicksilver's ability better than the people present. Quicksilver was cut apart by him from the low-speed universe. Scarlet Witch whispered. She was the only one present who could fully understand the reason, and she easily got the answer from the infinite probability of the future. Quicksilver's ability allows him to enter a parallel universe near the speed of light when he accelerates, and the space of the two universes completely overlaps. The speed of that universe is several times that of our universe. Quicksilver was able to affect the activity of matter in the real universe through the near-light-speed universe. But now, the near-light-speed universe has been separated from the real universe by apocalypse, causing the time difference between the two to be reversed. Chun-Ong smiled, bypassed Quicksilver, who was frozen in the parallel universe, and arrived in front of everyone. Most people couldn't help but take a few steps back, instinctively wanting to avoid it. Quicksilver was more dangerous than most of the people here. In the hands of this person, it was like child's play. The new evil god that was born from Walter's body didn't even have the time to display her insanity before something even crazier than her arrived. Chaos magic frantically warned of the future's despair and darkness. Even with the chaos evil god's unreasonable evil, they couldn't bear the horror of being written in a book and toying with fate as they pleased. Ah! A sharp scream shook the minds of the others, and they fell into chaos. Chaos magic jumped between one possibility after another. Just a few steps away from Chun-Ong, Scarlet Witch, and everyone present attacked Chun-Ong. Everyone did their best, and Neptune only lasted for less than a breath before exploding into a speck of dust in the universe. But after 1 minute and 18 seconds, Scarlet Witch's vision turned into darkness. I will die. I will die. Chaos magic frantically warned Scarlet Witch in her heart. 1 more minute and 18 seconds, and I will die. There was no time to think about anything else. Scarlet Witch desperately concentrated and operated her ability. Chaos magic peaked at everything in the future probability cloud with unprecedented efficiency, trying to lock in a safe ending. I won't die. Scarlet, which frantically insisted on this belief in her heart, trying to distort reality. Locking in the future world where she was still alive, under the distortion of chaos magic, there was no reality that couldn't be manipulated. What if I don't exist in the future 1 minute and 18 seconds later? Scarlet, which erased her future self and completely disappeared from the universe's timeline a minute later. In the 2-hour future, she didn't exist at all, and she didn't appear until 2 hours and 1 minute later. Directly eliminated from the concept of time. 1 minute later, Scarlet, which appeared 2 hours later. In the future probability cloud, she clearly saw that the other mutants still faced Chenong. It's just that this time they failed even earlier. Magneto only existed for a breath and disintegrated in an instant. A large group of genes collapsed because of excessive personality fluctuations. Iceman was completely unable to exert his abilities and evaporated in cosmic rays. There were also Vulcan, Mr. M, Storm, Quicksilver, Shadowcat, Blink, Iceman Aurora, Sanctuary, Angel, and Gold Pill. All of them were easily defeated by Chenong in less than 5 minutes. Some disappeared completely, and some were captured. Death Marquis persisted the longest. He called on himself and the multiverse to help and tried to erase the reality where Chenong was, but Chenong erased him from reality. How was this possible? Scarlet, which couldn't believe it. This scene really subverted her understanding. Even if she looked down on the abilities of other mutants, she had to admit that there were many mutants that even she was inferior to. In the direction of using his abilities, Magneto far surpassed her. He, who had completely mastered the electromagnetic force, was almost a god in the single universe. Vulcan's temperature control, Iceman's material subversion, Storm's cosmic storm. There was also Death Marquis, who even she couldn't see through, who could create and control various existences in the multiverse out of thin air. He could travel between parallel universes and destroy reality effortlessly, but he only lasted a few minutes. Their various strange abilities and applications, combined together, could completely subvert the entire world. Even she couldn't face the enemy head-on, let alone solve all of them so easily. Without my help, they failed even faster. Last time I was the first to die, but in the future I saw they lasted at least 2 hours, and this time it only took 5 minutes. That monster. Last time, it was like he was playing with us. No, it should be studying us. Then why didn't he do it this time? Scarlet, which looked at the calm expression of future Chenong, and a shocking guess flashed in her heart. Could it be? He has already studied it. Looking at the future Chenong standing quietly in the same place, Scarlet, which screamed wildly in her heart. Impossible. He can't have experienced the world just now. That only exists in the future of probability clouds. But Chenong's performance has made her believe that this time Chenong has a direct connection with the one that destroyed her in 18 seconds. They're the same. After everyone failed, Chenong glanced at Scarlet Witch's perspective, and the world fell into darkness again.